The night Vivian Hale stood barefoot on a rotting porch and asked a stranger if she was still pretty, she had no idea a storm was about to destroy everything she owned, or that the man who answered her would be the only thing standing between her and total ruin. If you want to see how a billionaire fights back when the world tries to break her, stick around until the end. And hey, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The kitchen smelled like burnt macaroni and defeat. Nolan Pierce scraped the blackened pasta into the trash, listening to his daughter Emma yell something incomprehensible from upstairs. 7 years old, and she had the lung capacity of an opera singer. He'd already told her twice that no, she couldn't have ice cream for dinner, and yes, she still had to brush her teeth, even if Madison's mom supposedly let Madison skip it. "Dad!" Emma's voice carried down the stairs like a fire alarm. "The toilet's making that noise again." Christ. The toilet. He'd meant to fix that 3 days ago. "I'll get it in a minute," he called back, dumping the pot into the sink with more force than necessary. Through the window above the sink, he could see straight into the backyard next door. The Hale property. 6,000 square feet of pristine white siding, professional landscaping, and the kind of money that made his own place look like a tool shed. He'd lived here 4 years and barely exchanged 10 words with the woman who owned it. Vivian Hale. He knew her name from the real estate gossip when she'd bought the place and from the occasional mention in the local business section. Some kind of tech investor. Venture capital, maybe. He didn't pay much attention. What he did notice was that her husband's car hadn't been in the driveway for 3 weeks. Not that it was his business. He was elbow deep in dish soap when he heard the sound. Not Emma this time. Something else. A crack, sharp and sudden, like a tree branch snapping. Then a scream, short, surprised, cut off almost before it started. Nolan's hands were out of the sink before his brain caught up. He grabbed a dish towel, wiped his palms as he moved toward the back door. The sound had come from next door. He was sure of it. "Emma, stay inside!" he barked up the stairs. "But Dad!" "Inside, I mean it!" He stepped out onto his back porch, squinting into the late afternoon light. The sun hung low and orange, turning everything gold in shadow. The air felt heavy, thick, like the sky was holding its breath. Then he saw her. Vivian Hale stood on her back porch, maybe 30 feet from where he stood, barefoot. Her cardigan hung off one shoulder, exposing a wrinkled white blouse underneath. Her hair, usually swept up in some kind of elegant knot, fell loose around her face in dark, messy waves. She looked like she'd been crying for hours, and she was staring down at the porch beneath her feet like it had just tried to kill her. "You all right over there?" Nolan called. Her head snapped up. For a second, she looked at him like she didn't recognize him, like she'd forgotten other people existed. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. "I think the board just gave out." Nolan moved closer to the fence. From here, he could see the problem. One of the porch steps had split clean down the middle, and the railing post beside it leaned at a dangerous angle. The whole structure looked like it was held together with hope and paint. "You hurt?" he asked. "No, I just..." She pressed a hand to her forehead. "I wasn't paying attention." That much was obvious. She looked like she'd been pacing for hours, wearing grooves into the boards until one of them finally surrendered. Nolan glanced back at his house. Emma's face appeared in the upstairs window, watching. He gave her a stern look and pointed inside. She disappeared. When he turned back, Vivian was still standing there, frozen, staring at nothing. "You should probably get off that porch," he said. "Whole thing looks like it's about to go." She blinked, looked down, took one careful step backward, then another until she was standing on the grass. Her hands were shaking. "I didn't even notice," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "I've walked across that porch 1,000 times, and I never noticed it was falling apart." Nolan didn't say anything. He'd learned a long time ago that some statements weren't looking for a response. She wrapped her arms around herself, even though it wasn't cold. The cardigan slipped further down her shoulder. She didn't fix it. "He left," she said suddenly. Nolan paused. "Who did?" "My husband." She laughed, but it sounded wrong, sharp and bitter. 3 weeks ago. Packed a bag and walked out. Didn't even leave a note. Just texted me 2 days later to say he'd found someone better. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. "I'm sorry," Nolan said, because what else was there to say? "Someone younger," Vivian continued like she hadn't heard him. "That's what he said. Someone who still looks good in the morning, someone who doesn't have gray hairs or stretch marks or—" Her voice broke. She stopped, pressed her fingers against her eyes. Nolan felt like he was watching something private, something he wasn't supposed to see, but he didn't look away. When she finally dropped her hands, her eyes were red but dry. "Do you think I'm still pretty?" she asked. The question hit him like a punch, not because it was inappropriate or unexpected, but because of the way she asked it. Desperate. Like his answer actually mattered. Like it might be the only thing holding her together. Nolan looked at her. Really looked. Barefoot in the grass, cardigan falling off, hair a mess, mascara smudged under her eyes. She didn't look like the polished businesswoman he'd seen getting into her black Mercedes every morning. She looked human. Breakable. He could have said yes. Could have told her she was beautiful. That her husband was an idiot. That any man would be lucky to have her. Easy words, the kind people expected. But Nolan had never been good at easy words. "That step you were standing on," he said instead, nodding toward the porch. "It's been rotting from the inside for months, maybe longer. You couldn't see it because the paint covered it up, made it look solid, but underneath it was already gone." Vivian stared at him, confused, waiting for him to get to the point. "Pretty's like that," Nolan said. "It's paint. It covers things up for a while, makes everything look good from a distance. But it doesn't hold weight, doesn't keep you standing when pressure hits." He gestured toward the damaged porch. "That post right there? The one that's leaning? It's not pretty, never was. But it's the only thing keeping that whole side of the porch from collapsing. It's doing the job pretty can't do." She didn't respond, just looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "So no," Nolan said quietly. "I don't think you need to be pretty. I think you need to be the post." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind picked up, pulling at her hair, her cardigan. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, faint but unmistakable. Vivian's mouth opened, closed. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Then Emma's voice shattered the moment. "Dad, the toilet's overflowing!" Nolan closed his eyes. Of course it was. "I gotta go," he said, already turning back toward his house. "Wait." He stopped, looked back. Vivian was still standing in the grass, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller somehow, younger. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. Didn't trust himself to say anything else. Then he jogged back to his house to deal with whatever disaster Emma had created. By the time he got the toilet under control, a toy dinosaur lodged in the pipe naturally, the sky had turned the color of a bruise. Dark purple and gray, swollen with rain that hadn't started falling yet. The air pressure made his ears pop. Emma sat at the kitchen table, picking at the emergency peanut butter sandwich he'd thrown together. She kept glancing toward the window. "Is there going to be a storm?" she asked. "Looks like it." "A bad one?" Nolan checked his phone. 3 weather alerts, severe thunderstorm warning, possible tornadic activity, winds up to 70 miles per hour. "Could be," he admitted. Emma's eyes went wide. She loved storms when they were distant and exciting, hated them when they got too close. "It'll be okay," Nolan said, ruffling her hair. "We've been through worse." That was only half true. They'd been through one bad storm since moving here, a few years back, knocked out power for 2 days. But nothing catastrophic. Nothing that made him worry about the structure of the house. The first drops of rain hit the kitchen window like thrown pebbles. Then more. Within seconds, it was a downpour. "Whoa," Emma breathed, pressing her face against the glass. Nolan moved to the window beside her. The rain came down so hard it looked like fog. He could barely see 10 feet into the backyard. The fence. The trees bending and whipping in the wind. And somewhere beyond that wall of water, Vivian Hale was alone in a house with a husband who'd abandoned her and a porch that was already falling apart. Not your problem, he told himself, but he kept looking. The power went out at 8:47 p.m. Emma had just finished brushing her teeth, supervised because Nolan didn't trust her claims about Madison's mom. When everything went dark, she shrieked. Nolan found her in the hallway, gripping her toothbrush like a weapon. "It's just the power," he said, pulling out his phone for light. "Storm probably took out a transformer. I don't like it." "I know. Come on. Let's get you to bed." He tucked her in with 2 flashlights and her favorite stuffed elephant. The rain hammered against the windows like fists. Wind screamed through gaps in the siding. Emma burrowed under her blankets. "Will you stay?" she asked, her voice small. "For a little bit." He sat on the edge of her bed, listening to the storm tear itself apart outside. His phone buzzed. Another weather alert. This one worse. Severe thunderstorm warning upgraded. Tornado watch extended. Seek shelter immediately. Emma's breathing evened out after 20 minutes. Nolan waited another 10 to be sure, then carefully stood and backed out of the room. Downstairs, he checked the windows. Locked. Checked the doors. Locked. Checked his emergency kit. Flashlights, batteries, first aid, water. Everything accounted for. Then he made the mistake of looking out the kitchen window. At first, he thought the dark shape was just shadow. Rain distortion, his eyes playing tricks in the storm. Then lightning cracked across the sky, turning night into day for one brilliant second. And Nolan saw it. The oak tree in Vivian's backyard, a massive thing, easily 60 feet tall, was leaning, not bending in the wind like the other trees. Leaning, tilting, the root ball lifting out of the ground like a creature trying to pull itself free. "No," Nolan said aloud. "No, no, no." He watched, frozen, as another gust of wind slammed into the tree. It tilted further, roots snapping like gunshots even through the roar of the storm. And then it went. The entire tree toppled in what felt like slow motion, branches whipping, trunk groaning. It fell directly toward Vivian's house, toward the sunroom on the backside, and Nolan knew, absolutely knew, that the impact was going to be catastrophic. The crash, when it came, was the loudest thing he'd ever heard. The sound of wood and glass and metal all breaking at once. The entire house shuddered. Even from here, 30 feet away, Nolan felt the vibration through the ground. Then silence. Just the rain. The wind. Nothing else. Nolan's body moved before his brain caught up. He grabbed his rain jacket, shoved his feet into boots, snatched his flashlight and his phone. Emma. He couldn't leave Emma alone. He took the stairs 2 at a time, burst into her room. She was sitting up in bed, eyes wide, clutching her elephant. "What was that?" she whispered. "Tree fell next door," Nolan said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I need to go check on the neighbor. You stay right here. Do not leave this room. Understand?" "But Dad..." "Emma, I need you to be brave right now. Stay in bed. Stay away from the windows. I'll be back as fast as I can." She nodded, terrified. Nolan kissed her forehead, then ran. The rain hit him like a wall the second he stepped outside, cold and hard and relentless. His flashlight beam barely cut through it. He could hear the wind tearing at the trees, branches cracking, debris skittering across pavement. He vaulted the fence, easier than going around, and landed in Vivian's backyard. The oak had hit the house dead center. The trunk had punched through the sunroom roof like a fist through paper. Glass everywhere, shingles torn off. The entire back wall of the room caved in. Rain pouring inside. "Vivian!" Nolan shouted. "Vivian, can you hear me?" Nothing. He ran toward the house, boots crunching on broken glass. The back door hung open, knocked off its hinges by the impact. He stepped inside. The kitchen was chaos. Cabinets thrown open, dishes shattered on the floor, water streaming in from the damaged sunroom beyond. And in the middle of it all, Vivian. She stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the sunroom, staring at the destruction, soaked to the skin, hair plastered to her face. She didn't seem to notice Nolan at all. "Vivian," he said again, softer this time. She turned slowly, looked at him like she was seeing a ghost. "It's gone," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "It's all gone." Nolan moved closer, careful not to step on the glass. "Are you hurt?" She didn't answer, just turned back to stare at the ruined sunroom. He grabbed her arm, gently, but firm enough to get her attention. "Vivian, are you hurt?" "I was in there," she said. 5 minutes before it fell. I was sitting in there drinking wine, trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage now that he's frozen our joint accounts. And then I heard the wind get louder, and I thought I should close the windows, and I walked into the kitchen, and she stopped, swallowed. 5 minutes. Nolan's chest tightened. 5 minutes. She'd missed death by 5 minutes. Okay, he said. Okay, you're all right. You're safe. But we need to get you out of here. This structure isn't stable. I don't have anywhere to go. You can come to my place, just for tonight, until the storm passes. She shook her head. I can't leave. What if someone breaks in? What if more of it collapses? Vivian, this is all I have left. Her voice cracked. He took everything else, the accounts, the cars, the company shares. This house is the only thing that's still mine, and now it's... She gestured helplessly at the destruction. Look at it. Nolan looked. The tree trunk had punched a hole 6 feet wide through the roof. Rain was pouring in, pooling on the floor, soaking into the walls. The ceiling sagged. One of the support beams was cracked. The whole room could come down at any second. But he also saw something else. The damage was bad, yes, catastrophic even. But it wasn't total. The main structure of the house was still standing. The walls were intact. The foundation looked solid. This wasn't a teardown. It was a repair job. A big one. Expensive. Complicated. But possible. How much do you want to keep this house? He asked. Vivian looked at him like he was insane. What? I'm serious. How much do you want to keep it? It's the only thing I have left. Of course I want to keep it. Nolan nodded, made a decision he'd probably regret. Then we shore it up, tonight, before the rest of it comes down. You can't... I'm a contractor, he said. I've got a crew. We can stabilize the worst of it, get tarps up, keep the water out. Won't be pretty, but it'll hold until we can do proper repairs. I can't afford... We'll figure out payment later. Right now, we need to move. You have a phone that works? She fumbled in her pocket, pulled out her cell. The screen was cracked, but the light still glowed. Call whoever you need to call, Nolan said. Insurance, family, lawyer, I don't care. But do it from my house where it's dry. I'll get my guys over here. Why are you doing this? The question stopped him. He looked at her, really looked at her, the way he had earlier on the porch. Soaked, shaking, holding herself together with nothing but sheer will. Because you're not broken yet, he said, and I don't plan to let you start now. By 10 p.m., Nolan had 3 guys on site. Marcus showed up first, driving his truck through rain that had become a proper flood. 6'4", built like a bulldozer, and the kind of guy who'd show up to a disaster scene in the middle of the night without asking questions. This is bad, Marcus said, surveying the damage. I know. Like really bad. I know. You sure she can pay for this? Nolan hesitated. No. Marcus gave him a look. Man. I know. You got a crush on this lady or something? She's my neighbor. Her house just got destroyed. What was I supposed to do? Not volunteer for a $10,000 repair job in the middle of a goddamn hurricane? It's not a hurricane. Feels like one. Fair point. David and Cole arrived 20 minutes later in David's van, hauling tarps and 2x4s and enough equipment to build a small barn. They took one look at the sunroom and started swearing in Spanish. We're gonna need more wood, David said. I've got some in my shed, Nolan replied. And whatever we can salvage from here. This is insane. Probably. Your neighbor better be worth it. Nolan didn't answer that. They worked through the night. First priority, stabilize the ceiling. The main support beam was cracked but not broken. They reinforced it with 2x6s, bracing it from below, distributing the weight. Marcus and David handled that while Cole and Nolan dragged debris out of the room, chunks of tree, shattered glass, soaked drywall. Everything went into a pile in the backyard. The rain didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. They worked in ankle-deep water, flashlights duct taped to their heads, voices hoarse from shouting over the wind. Around midnight, Nolan looked up and saw Vivian standing in the kitchen doorway. She'd changed into dry clothes, jeans and a sweatshirt that looked 2 sizes too big. Her hair was pulled back. She held 2 thermoses of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said. Marcus accepted his cup like she'd handed him liquid gold. Lady, I could kiss you. Please don't, Vivian said. Said. But there was almost a smile on her face. She handed the second thermos to Nolan. Their fingers brushed. Hers were ice cold. You should be inside, he said, with Emma. Emma's asleep on your couch. I checked on her 10 minutes ago. Vivian looked past him at the work they'd done, the braced beam, the tarps going up over the holes in the roof. This is insane. You know that, right? Yeah. You're going to get hurt. Probably not. Nolan. He looked at her. She looked back. Something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition. Go back inside, he said quietly, before you catch pneumonia. She went. They finished the emergency stabilization at 3:47 a.m. The ceiling was braced. The roof was tarped. The worst of the water damage was contained. It wasn't pretty. Nothing about it was pretty, but it was solid. The house would hold. Marcus, David, and Cole left without asking for payment. Nolan promised to call them in the morning to talk about next steps. They nodded, exhausted, and drove off into the rain. Nolan stood alone in Vivian's ruined sunroom, soaked to the bone, smelling like wet wood and sweat. His hands ached. His back screamed. He was pretty sure he'd bruised a rib somewhere along the way. But the house was still standing. He turned off his flashlight and walked back to his own place. Emma was still asleep on the couch, curled up under a blanket. Vivian sat in the armchair across from her, watching her sleep. She woke up once, Vivian said quietly. Asked where you were? I told her you were helping the neighbor fix her house. She said that sounded like something you'd do. Nolan smiled, despite himself. Yeah, that sounds like her. Thank you, Vivian said. For tonight, for all of it. I don't know how I'll ever… Don't, Nolan interrupted. Not yet. We'll figure it out. She nodded. Looked like she wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Nolan picked Emma up carefully, cradling her against his chest. She mumbled something in her sleep and wrapped her arms around his neck. Get some sleep, he told Vivian. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He carried Emma upstairs, tucked her into bed, and collapsed into his own room without even taking off his wet clothes. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, but neither of them knew that the real storm was just beginning. Nolan woke to sunlight and the sound of a car door slamming. He groaned, checked his phone. 8:23 a.m., 4 hours of sleep. His entire body felt like it had been run over by a truck. The car door slammed again, louder this time, angrier. He dragged himself out of bed and looked out the window. A black Porsche sat in Vivian's driveway. Expensive, ostentatious, the kind of car that screamed money and ego in equal measure. A man stood beside it, tall, well-dressed even in casual clothes, dark hair slicked back with too much product. He was pointing at Vivian's house, gesturing wildly, talking to someone on his phone. Then Vivian's front door opened and she stepped out. Even from here, Nolan could see her stiffen, could see the way her shoulders squared, the way her hands curled into fists. The man turned, saw her, ended his phone call, and smiled. It was the cruelest smile Nolan had ever seen. The kind of smile that said, I've already won, and you don't even know it yet. Nolan was moving before he made a conscious decision to do so. He pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, shoved his feet into shoes, and headed downstairs. Emma was still asleep. Good. He scribbled a quick note. Back soon. Stay inside. Love you. And left it on the kitchen table. Then he walked out into the morning light. The air smelled like rain and broken trees. The sky was clear. Innocent. Like the storm had never happened. Vivian and the man were standing in her driveway, 10 feet apart, not touching, not even close. Don't care what you think you're entitled to, Vivian was saying. Her voice was cold, controlled. This is my house. My name is on the deed. And my name is on the mortgage, the man shot back. Which means I have just as much right to make decisions about this property as you do. You left. You walked out. You don't get to come back now, and I'm not coming back. I'm protecting my investment. He gestured toward the damaged sunroom, visible from the front through the side yard. Look at this place, Vivian. It's destroyed. It's not safe. We need to sell before it gets condemned. It's not destroyed. It's being repaired. By who? Some hack you found in the phone book? That's when Nolan stepped into view. By me, he said. Both of them turned. The man looked Nolan up and down, took in the work boots, the faded jeans, the calloused hands. His lip curled. And you are? He asked. Nolan Pierce. I live next door. A neighbor. Great. The man turned back to Vivian. You hired a neighbor to repair $50,000 worth of structural damage? He stabilized the house last night, Vivian said, in the middle of the storm, while you were probably in bed with your girlfriend. The man's jaw tightened. Don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? This isn't about me and you. This is about the house. Everything is about you and me. That's the problem. Nolan cleared his throat. Both of them looked at him again. If you're worried about the repairs, Nolan said calmly, I can provide references. Licensed contractor, 15 years experience. I've worked on projects twice this size. The man studied him. How much? Excuse me? How much is she paying you? Nolan hesitated. We haven't discussed final numbers yet. Of course you haven't, the man laughed, short and bitter. Let me guess. You're doing this out of the goodness of your heart. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. How noble. The man pulled a folded stack of papers from his jacket pocket. Well, here's something that also needs to be done. He held the papers out to Vivian. She didn't take them. What is that? She asked. Petition for emergency sale of marital property. His voice was flat, professional, like he was reading from a script. Given the extensive storm damage and the immediate safety concerns, I'm requesting the court authorize a quick sale of this property. Proceeds to be divided according to the prenup. Vivian's face went white. You can't do that. I absolutely can. The house is a shared asset. It's damaged. It's dangerous. We sell now, before it loses more value, or we both lose money. This isn't about money. You want me out of this house. I want us both to walk away with something instead of watching this place fall apart while you play construction worker with the neighbor. Nolan's hands curled into fists. He forced them to relax. Vivian took the papers, didn't open them, just held them like they might burn her. I have a lawyer, she said quietly. Good. Have them call mine. We'll set a hearing for next week. The man turned toward his car, then paused, looked back. I'm not trying to hurt you, Viv. I'm trying to be practical. You're trying to win, Vivian said. That's all you've ever tried to do. He didn't deny it, just got in his Porsche and drove away. Vivian stood there, holding the papers, staring at nothing. Nolan walked over, stood beside her. Who was that? He asked, even though he already knew. Richard, she said. My husband. He seems like a real piece of work. She laughed. It sounded broken. That's one way to put it. Is he right? Can he force a sale? I don't know. Maybe. If the house is deemed unsafe, if there's an emergency. She trailed off, looked at the papers in her hands. He's been planning this. The timing, the storm. He knew this would happen. He can't control the weather, no, but he can control the narrative. Damaged house, expensive repairs, unsafe structure. He'll make it sound like keeping this place is irresponsible, like I'm being emotional instead of practical. She looked at Nolan. And maybe he's right. He's not. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. Nolan nodded toward the house. That structure is solid. The foundation is intact. The frame is good. What happened last night was bad, but it's not catastrophic. It's repairable. And more importantly, he paused, made sure she was listening. It's yours. You said it yourself. Your name is on the deed. This is your home. Don't let him take it just because he's louder. Vivian's eyes were bright. Not quite tears. Not yet. I can't afford to fight him, she said. He has better lawyers, more money, more time. I'm already drowning in legal fees from the divorce, and now this. She gestured at the house. I can't do it. Then let me help. You've already done too much. Not even close. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. Not as the neighbor, not as the contractor, as the man who'd shown up in the middle of a storm and refused to let her fall. Why? She asked. The same question she'd asked last night. Why are you doing this? Nolan thought about it. About Emma asleep on his couch, About Vivian standing barefoot on a broken porch asking if she was still pretty. About the way Richard had smiled like he'd already won. "Because he doesn't get to win," Nolan said. "Not like this." Vivian's breath caught. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control. Then she lowered it and looked him straight in the eye. "Okay," she said. "Okay. If you're serious, if you really want to help, then let's fight." Nolan smiled. "Good. But we do it my way." "Which is?" "First, we finish the repairs. Make this house so solid that no judge in the world would call it unsafe. Second, we document everything. Every beam we reinforce, every invoice, every inspection. We build a paper trail that proves this place is being professionally restored. And third, Nolan said, we make sure your husband knows exactly what he's up against." For the first time since Richard had driven away, Vivian smiled. It wasn't a pretty smile. It was sharp, dangerous. The smile of a woman who'd been pushed too far and was finally ready to push back. "I think I like your way," she said. Nolan nodded. "Then let's get to work." The work began that same afternoon. Nolan called Marcus first, then David and Cole. Within an hour, all three were back at Vivian's house, this time in daylight, surveying the full scope of what they'd stabilized in darkness. Marcus let out a low whistle when he saw the oak trunk still embedded in the sunroom roof. "We're going to need a crane to get that thing out," he said. "I know a guy," David replied, already pulling out his phone. "Owes me a favor from that job in Newton." "How big a favor?" "Big enough." Nolan stood in the center of the destroyed sunroom, Emma perched on his hip. She'd insisted on coming once she woke up and found out where he'd gone. Now she stared wide-eyed at the damage, one hand gripping his shoulder. "Did the tree die?" she asked. "The tree fell down," Nolan said. "Sometimes that happens in big storms." "Is Miss Vivian sad?" "Yeah, kiddo, she's pretty sad." Emma considered this. "We should make her cookies. Maybe later. Right now we need to fix her house." "Can I help?" "You can help by staying out of the way and not touching anything sharp." Emma sighed dramatically but nodded. Vivian appeared in the doorway, carrying a notebook and what looked like an insurance document. She'd pulled her hair back into a ponytail and traded the oversized sweatshirt for actual work clothes, jeans and a button-up that had probably cost more than Nolan's entire wardrobe. She looked tired, determined. "Insurance adjuster is coming tomorrow at 10, she said. "I told them we'd already done emergency stabilization. They said that was fine as long as we documented everything." "We took photos last night," Nolan said, "before and after." "Marcus, you still got those on your phone?" Marcus held up his phone. "Every angle. Even got some video of us bracing that beam." Vivian made a note. "Good, I'll need copies. My lawyer wants a complete timeline of all repairs." "Your lawyer know about Richard's petition?" Nolan asked. "I emailed her the papers this morning. She's reviewing them now. Said she'd call me later today." Vivian's jaw tightened. "She also said Richard's probably bluffing, that emergency sales are hard to push through unless the property is genuinely condemned." "This place is nowhere near condemned," Marcus said. "Damaged, yeah, but the bones are solid." "Try telling that to a judge who's looking at photos of a tree through the roof." "Then we make sure the judge sees photos of the tree coming out and the roof being rebuilt," Nolan said. "That's the whole point. We document the repair, not just the damage." Vivian nodded slowly, wrote something else in her notebook. Her hand shook slightly. She steadied it. Cole emerged from the kitchen carrying a tape measure and a clipboard. "Boss, we got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the window frames in the sunroom are custom built and probably discontinued. We're going to have to fabricate new ones or find an architectural salvage place that has something close." Nolan rubbed his face. Of course they were custom. Nothing about this house was standard. "How long to fabricate?" 2 weeks if we're lucky, 4 if we're not." "We don't have 4 weeks." "Then we get lucky or we board up the windows and deal with it later." Vivian looked between them. "What's the difference?" "In cost, I mean." Cole glanced at Nolan. Nolan glanced at Marcus. Nobody wanted to say the number. "Ballpark," Vivian pressed. "I need to know what I'm dealing with." "Boarding them up is maybe 300 in materials," Nolan said. "Fabricating custom frames is closer to 8,000. That's materials and labor." Vivian didn't flinch, didn't react at all, just wrote it down. "What about the roof?" she asked. Depends on how much we have to replace, Marcus said. Right now we've got tarps covering about 400 square feet. Some of those joists are cracked. Some are fine. Won't know for sure until we get the tree out and pull up the damaged sections. Estimate, Marcus exchanged a look with David. 15 to 20,000. Maybe more if we find rot or mold once we open it up. This time Vivian did flinch, just barely, a tightening around her eyes. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. What else? They walked her through the rest. Water damage to the walls needed to be gutted and replaced. Flooring in the sunroom, ruined, would need to come up. Electrical, possibly compromised, would need an inspection. Drywall throughout the back half of the house, soaked, had to go. The list went on and on. By the time they finished, Vivian had filled 3 pages in her notebook. So we're looking at what? She asked. 50,000? 60? If nothing else goes wrong, Nolan said. Which it will. Something always does. 75 then. Probably closer to 80 by the time we're done. Vivian closed the notebook. Didn't say anything for a long moment. Just stood there, staring at the ruined sunroom like it was a problem she could solve through sheer force of will. I don't have $80,000, she said finally. Richard froze the joint accounts. My personal savings might cover 20, maybe 30 if I liquidate some investments. The insurance payout won't come for weeks, and even then it probably won't cover everything. We can work in phases, Nolan said. Priority repairs first. Get the structure sound, get it weather-tight. The cosmetic stuff can wait. And if Richard's petition goes through before we finish, nobody had an answer for that. Emma tugged on Nolan's shirt. Dad, I'm hungry. I know, Em. Give me a minute. But I'm really hungry. Vivian looked at Emma, then at Nolan. Something shifted in her expression, softened. When's the last time you ate? She asked him. Nolan tried to remember. The coffee at 3 in the morning. Before that, he honestly couldn't recall. I'm fine, he said. You look like you're about to fall over. I'm fine. Vivian turned to Marcus. You guys hungry? Marcus perked up. I could eat. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, my treat. Consider it a down payment. You don't have to. I'm not asking. Vivian's voice had gone firm. Not quite an order, but close. You worked through the night. You came back today. The least I can do is buy you lunch. Marcus looked at Nolan. Nolan looked at Emma, who was now staring at Vivian with the kind of hope only a 7-year-old could muster when food was on the table. All right, Nolan conceded, but we're coming back after. We need to at least get measurements done today. Deal. The diner was one of those old-school places with cracked vinyl booths and laminated menus that hadn't changed since 1987. Emma ordered pancakes, even though it was 2 in the afternoon. Marcus ordered enough food for 3 people. Vivian picked at a salad she didn't eat. Nolan watched her across the table. She kept checking her phone, waiting for her lawyer to call. She'll call, he said. Vivian looked up. What? Your lawyer. She'll call. Staring at your phone won't make it happen faster. I know that. Do you? Vivian set the phone down, picked up her fork, put it down again. I keep thinking about what Richard said, about me being emotional instead of practical, about the house being a lost cause. It's not. You don't know that. Not for sure. I know structures. I know what can be saved and what can't. This house can be saved. At what cost? Does it matter? Of course it matters. If I pour everything I have into this place and then lose it anyway, then you'll have fought, Nolan interrupted. You'll have tried. You won't spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd just stood up and said no. Vivian stared at him. Is that what you did? With your wife? The question landed like a punch. Nolan felt Marcus stiffen beside him, felt Emma go quiet, her fork hovering over her pancakes. My wife died, Nolan said quietly. Cancer, 3 years ago. So no. I didn't get to fight. I just got to watch. Vivian's face went white. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It's fine. It's not fine. That was incredibly insensitive. You didn't know. That's not an excuse. Nolan shook his head. Look, I'm not trying to compare situations. I'm just saying that when you have the chance to fight for something that matters, you take it, even if the odds are bad, even if it costs everything, Because the alternative is living with the fact that you gave up. Vivian's phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast she almost knocked over her water glass. "It's her," she said. "My lawyer." She stood, already moving toward the door. "I need to take this." She disappeared outside. Through the window, Nolan could see her pacing on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear. Her free hand gestured sharply. Whatever the lawyer was saying, Vivian didn't like it. Emma reached across the table and patted Nolan's hand. "It's okay, Dad. Mom wouldn't be mad that you're helping Miss Vivian." Something in Nolan's chest cracked. He pulled Emma close, kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, kiddo." Marcus cleared his throat. "So, we're going to talk about the fact that you're in way over your head with this job." "Nope. Because you know she can't pay what this is actually going to cost." "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "Yep." "Man," Marcus shook his head. "You got it bad." "I'm helping a neighbor in a bad situation. That's it." "Sure. And I'm the Pope." David snorted into his coffee. Cole just grinned. Nolan ignored all of them. Vivian came back inside 10 minutes later. Her face was unreadable. "Well?" Nolan asked. She slid back into the booth. "Richard's petition has a hearing scheduled for next Thursday. That gives us 8 days." "To do what?" "To prove the house isn't a danger. To show that repairs are underway and being handled professionally. My lawyer thinks if we can demonstrate progress, real, documented progress, the judge will deny the emergency sale and let the property division proceed normally through the divorce." "What counts as progress?" "Tree removed, roof stabilized, water damage contained, at minimum." Vivian looked at Nolan. "Can we do that in 8 days?" Marcus whistled. "That's tight." "I didn't ask if it was tight. I asked if we can do it." "The crane guy can probably get here by Wednesday," David said slowly. "That's 3 days. Leaves us 5 days for everything else." "We'd have to work every day," Cole added. "Long hours. And we'd need more guys." "How many more?" Vivian asked. "At least 2. Maybe 3. "I can call Tommy and Rick," Marcus said. "They're between jobs right now." Nolan did the math in his head. 5 guys working 10-hour days for a week. Materials, equipment rental, dump fees. Even at cost, they were looking at $15,000 minimum, and that was just for the emergency repairs. "Vivian," he started. "I'll figure out the money," she said. "Just tell me we can do it." Nolan looked at his crew. Marcus shrugged. David nodded. Cole gave a thumbs up. "Yeah," Nolan said, "we can do it." Vivian's shoulders dropped. Relief. "Okay. Good. Then let's get back to work." They spent the rest of the afternoon taking measurements. Emma helped by holding the end of the tape measure and calling out numbers she couldn't actually read. Vivian followed behind with her notebook, writing everything down. By the time the sun started to set, they had a complete inventory of damage and a rough plan of attack. The crane was scheduled for Wednesday morning. In the meantime, they'd focus on stripping out the water-damaged materials and prepping for the roof work. Marcus would coordinate the additional crew. David would handle material orders. Cole would start fabricating temporary window covers. Nolan would hold everything together and try not to think about how badly this could all go wrong. That night, after Emma was asleep, he sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a notepad, ran the numbers 3 different ways. No matter how he worked it, they came up short. Even if Vivian could scrape together $30,000, even if insurance came through with another 20, they were still looking at a gap of $25,000 to $30,000. Money he didn't have. Money his business couldn't absorb. His phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "Thank you. For today? For all of it." "I know this is insane." He stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on something simple. "We'll figure it out." Her reply came immediately. "Promise?" Nolan looked at the numbers on his notepad. The impossible math. The gap that shouldn't exist but did. "Promise," he typed. It was a lie. Or at least a hope dressed up as a promise. But sometimes that was all you had. The next morning started at 6. Marcus showed up with Tommy and Rick in tow. 2 guys built like concrete blocks with the kind of hands that could bend rebar. They took one look at the sunroom and got to work without being asked. The demo was brutal. Pulling up soaked flooring, ripping out drywall that crumbled at the touch. Everything went into a rented dumpster that filled faster than Nolan expected. The water damage was worse than it looked. The oak had punched through the roof, but the rain that followed had soaked into everything. Insulation, framing, subfloor. It all had to go. By noon, they'd gutted half the sunroom. By 3, the whole thing was stripped down to studs. Vivian took photos of everything, every stage, every angle, building her documentation. The insurance adjuster arrived Tuesday morning, a tired-looking man in his 50s who'd probably seen 100 storm claims this week alone. He walked through the damage with a tablet, taking notes, snapping pictures. Frowned at the temporary bracing Nolan's crew had installed. "This wasn't done by a licensed contractor," he said. "Yes, it was," Vivian replied. "Nolan Pierce, licensed in this state for 15 years. I can provide his credentials." The adjuster looked at Nolan. "You did this the night of the storm?" "Emergency stabilization kept the house from collapsing." More notes. More frowning. "I'll need invoices. Documentation of all work performed." "I'll have them to you by end of day," Vivian said. The adjuster left an hour later without committing to a number. Said they'd review the claim and get back to her within 10 business days. 10 days, Vivian said after he left. "The hearing is in 6. "He'll expedite it once your lawyer calls," Nolan said. "Insurance companies hate court." "You don't know that." "No, but I'm optimistic." Vivian laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical. "Optimistic? Right. That's one word for it." Wednesday morning, the crane arrived. It took 4 hours to position it correctly. Another 2 to rig the oak trunk and start the lift. The tree was heavier than anyone expected. Waterlogged, dense, stubborn. It came out in 3 pieces instead of 1. Each section crashed into the dumpster with a sound like thunder. Neighbors gathered to watch. Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down. The Pattersons across the street. A couple of teenagers on bikes who filmed the whole thing on their phones. Nolan saw them whispering, pointing, looking at Vivian like she was some kind of spectacle. Vivian noticed too. She stood in the driveway, arms crossed, pretending not to care. But Nolan saw the tension in her jaw, the way her hands gripped her elbows. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "I am." "You're doing that thing where you pretend to ignore them while actually cataloging every word." She shot him a look. "I don't do that." "You absolutely do that." One of the teenagers called out, "Yo, isn't that the lady whose husband left her?" His friend elbowed him. "Dude, shut up." Too late. Vivian had heard. Her face went carefully blank. Nolan stepped toward the kids. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't have to. "Why don't you two find somewhere else to be?" The teenagers looked at him, looked at each other, rode off without another word. When Nolan turned back, Vivian was staring at the ground. "I'm fine," she said before he could ask. "I know. I don't need you to defend me. I know that too." She looked up, met his eyes. "Then why did you?" "Because they were being assholes, and I was closer." Something like a smile tugged at her mouth. "Fair enough." By Thursday, the roof work began. Tommy and Rick handled the heavy lifting while Marcus supervised. They pulled out the damaged joists, replaced them with new ones, installed plywood sheathing, got the whole section weather-tight before the sun went down. David spent the day running permits, building department, electrical inspection, plumbing. The paperwork alone was enough to drown in, but Vivian stayed on top of it, every form filled out, every signature obtained, every I dotted and T crossed. "You're good at this," Nolan told her late Thursday night. They were sitting in her kitchen, the one room of the house still relatively intact, reviewing the day's progress. At what? Project management, keeping track of 1,000,000 moving pieces. Vivian shrugged. "It's what I do." "Did. Before everything fell apart." "What kind of work?" "Venture capital. I helped startups find funding, build infrastructure, scale operations. It was good. I was good at it." She paused. "Richard hated it." "Why?" "Because I was better at it than he was. He's a hedge fund manager. Makes more money than I do. Did. But he never could handle the fact that I was the one people called when they needed actual help. When they needed someone who understood systems instead of just spreadsheets." She laughed bitterly. "Guess it doesn't matter now." "Why not?" "Because I haven't worked in 6 months. Been too busy dealing with lawyers and frozen accounts and a husband who wants to burn my life down just to prove he can." Nolan didn't say anything. Sometimes the best response was silence. Vivian rubbed her eyes. "Sorry, I shouldn't dump this on you." I asked. "You were being polite." "I don't do polite. If I didn't want to know, I wouldn't have asked." She studied him. "You're a strange man, Nolan Pierce." "I've been called worse." Friday morning brought the electrical inspector. He spent 3 hours poking through the walls, checking circuits, testing outlets. Found 2 code violations, one pre-existing, one caused by the storm. Nolan fixed both on the spot. The inspector signed off. One item checked off Vivian's list. The plumbing inspection went smoother. No major damage. A few minor leaks that David patched in under an hour. Another signature. By Friday evening, they had a weather-tight roof, clean electrical, functional plumbing, and a sunroom stripped down to studs but structurally sound. Vivian stood in the middle of it, taking it all in. "We actually did it," she said. "Most of it," Nolan corrected. "Still need to finish the interior work. But it's not a danger anymore. That's what the lawyer said we needed to prove." "Then we're on track." Vivian turned to him. "What happens if we lose anyway?" "We won't. But if we do, then we deal with it. But we're not there yet. Don't borrow trouble." She nodded. Didn't look convinced. Saturday was supposed to be a light day. Just clean up. Final prep before Monday's hearing. But when Nolan arrived at 8 in the morning, he found Vivian standing in the driveway, staring at a car he didn't recognize. Black sedan, tinted windows, government plates. "Code enforcement," Vivian said flatly. "Someone filed a complaint, said the house is a safety hazard." Nolan's stomach dropped. "When?" "Yesterday. Anonymous tip. They're sending an inspector Monday morning." "That's the same day as the hearing." "I know." "Richard?" "Probably." Nolan swore under his breath. It was a smart move, ruthless but smart. If code enforcement showed up and found violations, it would give Richard exactly the ammunition he needed. "What time Monday?" he asked. 9 a.m. The hearing was at 1. That gave them 4 hours. "Then we make sure there's nothing to find," Nolan said. They spent the weekend in a blur. Every detail checked and rechecked. Every board secured, every surface cleaned. Marcus brought in industrial fans to dry out the last of the moisture. Cole installed the temporary window covers. Not pretty, but functional. Tommy and Rick reinforced the porch, replacing the rotten boards and straightening the leaning post. By Sunday night, the house looked like a construction site, but a professional one. Organized, deliberate, safe. Vivian walked through one last time, notebook in hand, checking off items. "I think we're ready," she said. "You don't sound convinced." "I won't be convinced until the judge says no." Fair enough. Monday morning came too fast. The code enforcement inspector arrived at 8:45. A woman this time. Younger than the insurance adjuster, sharper. She went through the house with a fine-tooth comb. Checked the bracing, the electrical, the permits posted in the window. Looked for anything at all, that would justify a violation. She found nothing. "Temporary occupancy permit should be issued by end of week," she said, signing her report. "Provided you complete the interior work within the timeline on your permit application." Vivian took the signed form like it was made of gold. The inspector left. Vivian stood in the driveway, holding the paper, and started to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that she wiped away almost as fast as they fell. "Hey," Nolan said. "You did it." "We did it." "That's what I said." She laughed through the tears, shook her head. "I need to change. Court is in 4 hours." "You want company?" "No, my lawyer will be there. I'll be fine." She didn't look fine. She looked terrified. But Nolan didn't push, just nodded. "Text me when it's over." "I will." She went inside. Nolan stood in the driveway for a long moment, staring at the house, at all the work they'd done, at the thing they'd built together without really planning to. Then his phone buzzed. "Marcus." "Where you at, boss?" "We got a problem." Nolan closed his eyes. Of course they did. What kind of problem? The kind where the invoice you sent Vivian last week bounced. Payment declined. Nolan's stomach turned to ice. He called Marcus. "What do you mean declined?" "I mean the check didn't clear. Bank rejected it. insufficient funds. That's not possible. She said well, she didn't or couldn't. Either way, we got 15 grand worth of materials and labor with no payment. Nolan hung up, stared at his phone. Then he did something he probably shouldn't have. He called Vivian. She answered on the second ring. Nolan? What's wrong? The check bounced. Silence. Vivian? I know. Her voice was small, broken. Richard's lawyer filed an injunction Friday, froze my personal accounts, said I was dissipating assets. I tried to fix it. I tried to transfer funds from my business account, but it takes 3 days to clear and… She stopped, took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, I should have told you. How much do you have right now? $800. That's it. Everything else is locked up until the divorce settles. $800. Against $15,000 in costs they'd already incurred. Nolan, I'm so sorry. I'll figure something out. I'll go to court, he said. Win your hearing. We'll deal with the rest after. But, Vivian, go to court. He hung up before she could argue. Then he sat in his truck and stared at nothing while the world tilted sideways. $15,000. Money his business didn't have. Money he'd spent betting on a woman he barely knew and a fight that wasn't his. His phone buzzed again. A text from Vivian. I'm sorry. Nolan didn't reply. He just sat there, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into, and whether sorry would be enough when it all came crashing down. Nolan sat in his truck for 20 minutes trying to figure out how to tell Marcus they weren't getting paid. Not today. Maybe not ever. $15,000 down the drain because he'd made a promise he couldn't keep to a woman whose husband had weaponized every dollar she had left. His phone rang. Marcus. Nolan let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Look, man, I know this is bad, but we need to talk about next steps. Tommy and Rick are asking questions. David fronted $3 grand on materials on his credit card. We can't just eat this. Call me back. Nolan deleted the voicemail, started the truck, drove home. Emma was at school. The house was empty. He made coffee he didn't drink and stood at the kitchen window staring at Vivian's place. At the roof they'd fixed, the porch they'd rebuilt, the structure they'd saved, all of it hanging by a thread, because Richard had frozen her accounts and Nolan had been stupid enough to work on credit. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Pierce, this is Jennifer Chen, Vivian Hale's attorney. Vivian asked me to reach out. We need to discuss the invoicing situation before today's hearing. Can you call me? Nolan stared at the message. Then he called. Jennifer Chen answered on the first ring. Mr. Pierce, thank you for calling back. What do you need? Vivian tells me there's an outstanding invoice for $15,000. Is that correct? That's correct. And the payment bounced due to the account freeze? Yep. A pause. Mr. Pierce, I need to be direct with you. If Richard's attorney discovers there's an unpaid contractor invoice this large, he's going to use it. He'll argue that Vivian has been racking up debt she can't pay, that she's financially irresponsible, that the house repairs are proof she's in over her head. She's not in over her head, she's being sabotaged. I agree, but a judge looking at the paperwork won't see sabotage. He'll see unpaid bills and frozen accounts and conclude she can't afford the property. Nolan gripped the phone tighter. What are you asking me to do? I need you to file a mechanic's lien. A what? A mechanic's lien. It's a legal claim against the property for unpaid construction work. You file it with the county, it attaches to the deed, and it clouds the title. No one can sell the property until the lien is satisfied. Nolan's brain caught up. You want me to put a lien on Vivian's house? I want you to protect both of you. Right now you have no legal recourse if she can't pay. A lien gives you a claim. More importantly, it stops Richard cold. He can't force an emergency sale if the title is clouded. The whole petition becomes moot. She asked you to suggest this? She insisted. Said you'd done too much work to walk away with nothing. Nolan laughed. It came out bitter. She's worried about me getting paid while her husband's trying to take her house. She's worried about a lot of things, Mr. Pierce. But right now, the lien is the play that protects everyone. Are you willing to file it? Nolan thought about Vivian standing in her driveway that first night, asking if she was still pretty. Thought about her taking photos of every repair, filling notebooks with documentation, fighting like hell to keep the one thing Richard hadn't already taken. Yeah, he said. I'll file it. Good. I'll email you the forms. Get them notarized and filed before 1 p.m. I'll notify Richard's attorney at the hearing. He's going to lose his mind. That's the idea. Jennifer hung up. 5 minutes later, the forms hit Nolan's email. He printed them at the library, got them notarized at the bank, and drove to the county clerk's office. Filed the mechanic's lien at 12:45. 15 minutes before Vivian's hearing started. He didn't go to the courthouse, didn't want to see Richard's face or hear whatever lies the man was planning to tell. Instead, he went home, picked Emma up from school, made her a snack, helped her with homework, tried not to check his phone every 30 seconds. At 3:15, Vivian texted, "It's done. Judge denied the emergency sale. Richard's attorney tried to argue I was financially unstable, but Jennifer brought up the lien and the whole room went silent. Judge said the property can't be sold until all claims are settled, gave us 6 months to work out the division through normal divorce proceedings." Nolan read the message 3 times. 6 months. She had 6 months, he typed back. That's good. That's really good. Her reply came fast. I can't pay you. Not for months, maybe longer. I know the lien protects you legally, but I know what this costs you. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. We'll figure it out. He meant it, even though he had no idea how. That evening, Marcus showed up at Nolan's door. We need to talk, Marcus said. Nolan let him in, offered him a beer. Marcus took it, but didn't drink. Tommy and Rick want out, Marcus said. They're pissed about the money, said they can't afford to work for free. I don't blame them. David's okay for now, but he's got a wife and 2 kids. He can't carry that $3,000 forever. I know. And Cole's asking if we're even going to finish the job or if we're just walking away. Nolan set his beer down. I filed a lien today, on Vivian's property. Marcus blinked. You what? Mechanic's lien, $15,000. It's recorded, legal. Means we get paid eventually. Eventually doesn't pay my mortgage. I know that too. Marcus rubbed his face. Man, what are we doing here? This was supposed to be a quick job. Emergency repairs. Get in, get out, get paid. Now we're 3 weeks deep with nothing to show for it except a lien that might pay out in a year if we're lucky. You want to walk? Nolan asked. I won't stop you. Tell the guys they're done. I'll finish it myself. By yourself? Yeah. You gonna frame the interior by yourself? Wire the new outlets? Hang drywall? Finish the floors? If I have to. Marcus stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious. Why? She can't pay you. Her husband's a nightmare. This whole situation is a train wreck. Why are you still doing this? Nolan thought about that. About the real answer. The one that didn't make sense even to him. Because she asked me if she was still pretty, he said finally. And I told her she needed to be the post instead. And I meant it. But you can't tell someone to be the post and then walk away when things get hard. You have to be the post too. You have to hold. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he drained his beer in 3 swallows. You're an idiot, he said. Probably. I'll talk to the guys, see if they'll stick it out a little longer. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Marcus left. Nolan sat alone in his kitchen, wondering how long he could hold before everything collapsed. The next morning, Vivian knocked on his door at 7 a.m. She looked like she hadn't slept. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. She held a manila envelope. I need to show you something, she said. Nolan stepped aside. Let her in. She opened the envelope, pulled out a stack of papers. Bank statements. Investment documents. Legal correspondence. I spent all night going through my finances, she said. Every account, every asset, every possible source of liquidity. Richard's lawyer froze the obvious accounts, but there are a few things he missed. An old 401k from a job I had before we got married. Some stock options that vested last year. A savings bond my grandmother left me. She spread the papers on his kitchen table. If I liquidate everything, and I mean everything, I can get to $42,000. It'll take 3 weeks, maybe 4. There are penalties for early withdrawal, and I'll get destroyed on taxes, but I can do it. Nolan looked at the numbers. Vivian, that covers your $15,000 plus the additional work we still need to do. Windows, flooring, interior finishes, paint, Everything to make the house whole again. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You put a lien on your own work to protect me. The least I can do is actually pay you. Nolan sat down, looked at her across the table. If you liquidate all of this, what are you left with? $800. Same as I have now. And what do you live on? She didn't answer. Vivian, what do you live on? I'll figure it out. I can freelance, consulting work, something. You can't live on $800 while waiting for consulting gigs that might not come. Then I'll get a job. Retail. Waitressing. I don't care. You do care. And you shouldn't have to liquidate everything you own just to pay for repairs on a house you're trying to keep. What choice do I have? Her voice cracked. You filed that lien. You protected me. But it also means you're stuck. You can't walk away and you can't get paid until I pay you, and I can't pay you unless I burn through everything I have left. So we wait. For 6 months? A year? However long this divorce takes? While you carry $15,000 in debt you can't collect on. I've carried worse. That's not fair to you. Life's not fair. We work with what we've got. Vivian pressed her hands against her eyes, took a shaky breath. I'm so tired of being the one who needs help. I used to be the person who solved problems, who made things happen, who had answers. Now I'm just the woman whose husband left and whose house fell apart and who can't even pay the people trying to save her. You are paying us, just not today. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. She dropped her hands, looked at him. Why are you doing this? And don't give me that line about being the post. Tell me the real reason. Nolan met her eyes, held them, because I watched my wife die, he said quietly. And there was nothing I could do, no fight I could win, no problem I could fix. I just had to sit there and watch her slip away. And when she was gone, I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to actually help someone, to actually make a difference, I wouldn't walk away just because it was hard. He paused. You're that chance. This is me keeping that promise. Vivian's face crumpled. She pressed a hand to her mouth, nodded once, twice, then stood. Thank you, she whispered. She left before he could say anything else. Work resumed the next day. Tommy and Rick didn't come back. Marcus said they'd found another job, paid up front, couldn't pass it up. Nolan didn't blame them. That left Marcus, David, Cole, and Nolan. 4 guys trying to finish a job that needed 6. They worked longer hours, started at 7, didn't stop until dark. David's wife brought sandwiches at lunch. Cole's girlfriend dropped off coffee, small kindnesses that kept them going. Vivian worked alongside them, hauling debris, sweeping floors, holding boards steady while they nailed. She didn't know construction, but she learned fast. By the end of the first week, she could run a circular saw without supervision. You're pretty good at this, Cole told her one afternoon. It's just following instructions, she said. Nah, some people can't do that. Can't see how pieces fit together. You've got an eye for it. She smiled. First real smile Nolan had seen in days. The windows were the worst part. Cole had managed to fabricate frames that were close enough to the originals, but installing them took precision. A 1/4 inch off, and they wouldn't seal properly. Too tight, and the glass would crack. They spent 3 days on windows, measuring, cutting, adjusting, re-measuring. Vivian documented every step, took photos, made notes, building a record that proved this wasn't hack work. This was professional, careful, right. By the end of week 2, the sunroom had walls again, insulated, drywalled, taped and mudded. It looked like a room instead of a disaster zone. Vivian stood in the middle of it, turning slowly. I can't believe this is the same space, she said. It's not, Nolan replied. It's better, stronger, built to code, built to last. Built by you. By us. She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression, something Nolan couldn't quite name. Before he could figure it out, his phone rang. Unknown number. Nolan Pierce, he answered. Mr. Pierce, this is Amanda Rodriguez with the County Building Department. I'm calling about permit 7734-B filed for the Hale property. Nolan's stomach tightened. What about it? We received a complaint. Anonymous. Claims the work being done doesn't match the approved plans. I need to schedule an inspection. Of course. Another complaint, another obstacle. When? He asked. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Can you be there? I'll be there. He hung up, looked at Marcus. Building department, he said. Another inspection, tomorrow morning. Marcus swore. Let me guess. Anonymous complaint. Yep. Richard. Almost definitely. Vivian appeared in the doorway. She'd heard. What do they think is wrong? Doesn't matter. They have to investigate every complaint, which means we stop work and spend half a day walking an inspector through everything we've done. Will we pass? We should. Everything's to code. But inspectors can find problems if they want to find problems. Vivian's jaw set. Then we make sure they don't want to. The inspection lasted 3 hours. Amanda Rodriguez was thorough. She checked every joint, every outlet, every window seal, compared measurements to the approved plans, looked for anything at all, that was off. She found 2 minor issues, a junction box that needed a cover plate, a section of drywall where the seam was slightly wider than code preferred, both fixable in under an hour. Everything else looks good, she said, making notes on her tablet. Fix these 2 items and call for a final. I'll come back Friday. Friday, 3 days away. We'll be ready, Nolan said. Amanda left. Vivian sagged against the wall. How many more of these? She asked. How many more inspections and complaints and delays? However many it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. She looked at him, tired, worn down, but not broken. Not yet. I'm starting to hate this house, she said. No, you're not. I'm starting to hate what it represents. This endless fight, this constant battle just to keep something that should already be mine. It is yours. Deed says so. Judge says so. Just got to make it through the finish line. And if we don't? We will. She wanted to believe him. He could see it in her eyes, but belief was getting harder to hold on to. That night, Nolan got a call from David. I can't do this anymore, David said. No preamble, just fact. My wife's on me about the credit card bill, $3,000 plus interest. We need that money back. I know. I'm working on it. Working on it isn't paying the bill. I'm sorry, man. I like Vivian. I want to help, but I've got my own family to think about. I get it. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're throwing everything away for a woman who can't pay you and a house that's not even yours. Nolan didn't have a response to that. I'm out, David said. After Friday's inspection, I'm done. You need the $3,000 back within 30 days or I'm filing my own lien. He hung up. Nolan sat in his truck outside Emma's school, waiting for pickup, doing math that didn't work. $15,000 to Vivian's lien. $3,000 to David. Materials still coming in. His own business overhead. Mortgage. Emma's expenses. The numbers didn't add up. They hadn't added up for weeks. He'd been pretending they would somehow work out, but they wouldn't. Not without something breaking. Emma climbed into the truck. Dad, you okay? Yeah, kiddo, just thinking. About Miss Vivian? Nolan glanced at her. What makes you say that? Because you're always thinking about her now. You get that look. What look? The worried one, like when Mom was sick. The comparison hit harder than it should have. Nolan forced a smile. I'm not worried. Just focused. Emma didn't look convinced, but she dropped it. That night, Vivian texted him. I heard David's out. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Nolan stared at the message, thought about what to say, settled on the truth. It's not your fault. It's Richard's. Don't confuse the two. Her reply took 5 minutes. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever regret helping me? Nolan read the question 3 times. Then he called her. She answered immediately. You didn't have to call. Yeah, I did. Because you need to hear this out loud, not in a text. He took a breath. I don't regret helping you, not for a second, not when the check bounced, not when the complaints came in, not when my crew started bailing. None of it. But you're losing money. You're losing your team. I'm doing what needs to be done. That's it. No regrets. Silence on the other end. Then a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. I don't know how to thank you, she said finally. You don't have to. Just keep fighting. That's all the thanks I need. After he hung up, Nolan sat in the dark of his living room and wondered if he was the stupidest man alive or the most stubborn. Maybe both. Friday's inspection went clean. Amanda signed off on everything. The permit was closed. The house was officially code compliant. "You did good work here," Amanda told Nolan. "Whoever filed those complaints was wasting everyone's time. Appreciate that." She left. Marcus and Cole packed up their tools. David had already gone. Just walked off site after lunch without saying goodbye. Vivian stood in her completed sunroom, freshly painted walls, new windows, refinished floors, and started to cry. Not sad tears this time. Something else. Relief, maybe? Or exhaustion? Or the strange grief that comes when a battle finally ends and you realize how much it cost. Nolan gave her space, went home, paid Marcus and Cole what he could from his business account. Not full rate. Apologized. They took it without complaint. That evening, his phone rang. Jennifer Chen. "Mr. Pierce, I wanted to update you. Richard's attorney reached out. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "A settlement. Turns out Richard's investors are getting nervous about the divorce. Too much publicity, too many delays. They're pressuring him to wrap things up quickly." "What's he offering?" "Full ownership of the house to Vivian. He keeps the investment accounts and the cars. They split the remaining assets 50-50. "And the lien?" "Vivian pays you from the settlement funds. You'd have your money within 60 days. 60 days, not 6 months, not a year. 60 days. "What does Vivian say?" Nolan asked. "She wants to take it, wants this over, but she asked me to run it by you first. Said you've earned the right to weigh in." Nolan thought about Vivian standing barefoot on a broken porch, about the storm that tore her house apart, about the weeks of work and the 1,000 small battles they'd fought together. "Tell her to take it," he said. "Tell her to end this and move on." "You're sure?" "Completely." Jennifer thanked him and hung up. Nolan walked next door, found Vivian sitting on her newly repaired porch. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "Jennifer called you?" she said. "Yeah." "What do you think?" "I think you should take it. This house is yours. You won everything that matters." Vivian smiled, tired but genuine. "We won. Not just me." "Yeah," Nolan said. "We did." She stood, walked to the edge of the porch, looked at her house, whole again, strong again, hers again. "I'm going to put a plaque by the front door," she said. "My name, just mine, so everyone knows who this place belongs to." "Good." She turned to face him. "And I'm going to pay you, every cent, with interest." "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do. You held when everything tried to break. Now it's my turn to hold you." Nolan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. 2 weeks later, the settlement went through. Vivian got the house. Richard got his investments. The divorce moved toward finalization, and on a Tuesday afternoon, Nolan received a wire transfer for $17,000. $15,000 for the lien, $2,000 in interest. He paid David immediately, paid Marcus and Cole their full rates, put what was left back into his business account. The math finally worked. That evening, Vivian knocked on his door again. This time she held a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Celebration?" she asked. "For what?" "For winning, for surviving, for still being standing." Nolan let her in. They sat on his back porch, the one with the clear view of her house, and drank wine and watched the sun go down. "I have a confession," Vivian said after her second glass. "Yeah?" "That first night, when I asked if you thought I was pretty. I wasn't really asking about pretty. I was asking if I was worth saving." Nolan looked at her. "And now?" "Now I know the answer." She met his eyes. "But I didn't figure it out by myself. You showed me." "I just fixed your house." "No, you fixed a lot more than that." The space between them felt charged, electric, like something was about to shift and they both knew it. Vivian set down her glass, leaned closer. "Can I ask you something else?" she said quietly. "Always." "Do you think I'm still pretty?" It was the same question. But this time it meant something different. This time she wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to be seen. "No," Nolan said. Her face fell, just for a second. Then he continued. "Pretty's the wrong word. You're not pretty. You're solid. You're the post. You're the thing that held when everything tried to break. That's better than pretty. That's real. Vivian's breath caught. She stared at him like he'd just answered a question she'd been asking her whole life. Then she kissed him. Not tentative, not uncertain, deliberate. Like she'd been thinking about it for weeks and finally decided to stop thinking. Nolan kissed her back, let himself fall into it, into her, into the thing they'd been building without meaning to. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian rested her forehead against his. I think I've been falling for you since the night you told me to get off that porch, she whispered. Took you long enough to notice. She laughed, kissed him again, and this time neither of them pulled away. When Nolan woke the next morning, Vivian was gone. Not gone. Just back to her own house. He found a note on his kitchen counter written on the back of a receipt. Had to leave before Emma woke up. Didn't want to confuse her. Last night was... I don't know what it was. But I'm glad it happened. V. Nolan read it twice. Folded it. Put it in his pocket. Emma came downstairs 10 minutes later, already talking about the science project due Friday and how Madison's mom was letting Madison build a volcano, but could she build a rocket instead because rockets were cooler? Sure, Nolan said, only half listening. Really? Why not? Emma threw her arms around him. You're the best dad ever. He made her breakfast, drove her to school, came home and stared at his phone for 20 minutes trying to figure out what to text Vivian. Everything he typed sounded wrong, too casual, too serious, too presumptuous. Finally, he just sent, "You okay?" Her reply came an hour later, better than okay. Scared, but okay. He understood that. He was scared too. Scared of what last night meant. Scared of what happened next. Scared of screwing up something that felt important before it even had a chance to start. But he texted back anyway. Want to have dinner tonight? Just us, no house talk. Her response was immediate. Yes, but not at a restaurant. Too public. Your place. My place. 7? Perfect. She showed up at 7:15 carrying a bag of groceries and a nervous smile. I know you said no house talk, but I brought ingredients to actually cook something instead of ordering pizza, she said. Hope that's okay. You cook? I used to, before everything fell apart. Figured it was time to remember how. She made pasta from scratch. Not the box kind. Actual fresh pasta with flour and eggs and a rolling pin she borrowed from his mostly empty kitchen. Nolan watched her work, hands dusted with flour, hair falling in her face, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in weeks. Where'd you learn this? He asked. My grandmother. She was Italian. Refused to let me leave her house without knowing how to make proper pasta. Vivian smiled at the memory. Said a woman who can feed herself can survive anything. Smart woman. She was. Would have hated Richard. Would have loved this house, though. The bones of it. The history. She paused, kneading the dough. I think that's part of why I fought so hard to keep it. Not just because Richard wanted to take it, but because it reminded me of her. Of the idea that you can take something broken and make it whole again. Nolan leaned against the counter. You think that's true? That broken things can be whole again? Vivian looked at him. Really looked. I didn't used to, but yeah, I think so now. They ate at his small kitchen table. Talked about everything except the obvious. Emma's rocket project, Marcus's terrible jokes, the weather turning colder, small things, safe things. But the obvious sat between them anyway, heavy and undeniable. So, Vivian said finally, pushing pasta around her plate. Are we going to talk about last night, or are we just going to pretend it didn't happen? Do you want to talk about it? I don't know. Part of me thinks we should take it slow. Figure out what this is before we jump into something we're not ready for. She set down her fork. But another part of me is tired of being careful. Tired of overthinking everything. Tired of waiting for permission to want something. What do you want? Honestly, I want to not be alone anymore. I want to feel like someone sees me as more than the woman whose life fell apart. I want... She stopped, looked away. I want you. But I don't know if that's fair to you, if I'm ready, if you're ready, if we're just two people who went through something intense together and confused that for something else. Nolan reached across the table, took her hand. My wife died 3 years ago. I spent those 3 years focused on Emma, on work, on just getting through each day. I didn't think about dating, didn't think about wanting someone, didn't think I had room for it. He squeezed her hand. Then you showed up on a broken porch asking a question I didn't know how to answer, and everything shifted. Shifted how? I started wanting things again, started thinking about more than just survival, started remembering what it felt like to connect with someone who wasn't 7 years old. He smiled slightly. So yeah, maybe it's too fast, maybe we're confused, maybe this whole thing crashes and burns, but I'd rather try and fail than spend another 3 years wondering what if. Vivian's eyes were bright. She stood, walked around the table, kissed him like she was trying to prove something to herself. Okay, she said when they broke apart, let's try, but slow, because I'm a mess and you're carrying too much already, and Emma deserves better than watching two adults screw this up. Slow, Nolan agreed. We can do slow. They didn't do slow. Within 2 weeks, Vivian was spending most evenings at Nolan's place, cooking dinner, helping Emma with homework, falling asleep on his couch while they watched movies neither of them paid attention to. Emma noticed. Of course she noticed. Kids always did. Is Miss Vivian your girlfriend? She asked one morning over cereal. Nolan nearly choked on his coffee. What makes you ask that? Because she's here all the time, and you smile more when she's around. And last night I saw you holding hands. There was no point lying. Yeah, she's my girlfriend. Emma considered this. Does that mean she's going to move in? No, she has her own house. But she could move in if she wanted to? It's complicated. Why? Because grown-up relationships are complicated. That's a dumb answer. Yeah, it kind of is. Emma ate another spoonful of cereal. I like her. She's nice, and she makes better pasta than you. Everyone makes better pasta than me. True. That conversation should have been a warning. Should have made Nolan pump the brakes. But instead, he found himself thinking about what it would look like if Vivian did move in, if they combined their lives instead of keeping them separate. He mentioned it to Marcus one afternoon while they worked a small repair job across town. You're thinking about what? Marcus asked, nearly dropping his drill. Just thinking, not planning. There's a difference. Man, you've known this woman 2 months. 2 months ago, she was a stranger whose porch was falling apart. Now you're thinking about playing house? I said I was thinking, not doing. Thinking's how it starts. Next thing you know, you're buying rings and merging bank accounts and wondering how you got here. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I am. Married my wife 6 months after we met. Best decision I ever made. Also the scariest. Marcus set down his drill. Look, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Not because you feel responsible for her. Not because you went through something intense together, but because you actually want to build a life with this person. I think I do. You think or you know? Nolan didn't have an answer for that. But then Vivian's divorce papers came through. She called Nolan at work, voice shaking. It's done. It's official. I'm divorced. How do you feel? I don't know. Relieved? Terrified? Like I should be celebrating, but I can't remember how? You want company? Yeah, please. He found her sitting on her porch, the solid one, the one they'd rebuilt together, staring at nothing. The divorce decree sat on the step beside her, already curling at the edges in the cold November air. Nolan sat down next to her. Didn't say anything, just sat. I was married for 8 years, Vivian said finally. 8 years. And all I have to show for it is this house and a stack of legal papers that say we're strangers again. You have more than that. Like what? You have yourself back. The version of you that existed before Richard. The one who builds companies and solves problems and doesn't ask permission to take up space. Vivian laughed. It sounded wet. I don't know if that person still exists. She does. I've seen her. She shows up when you're arguing with building inspectors and managing subcontractors and refusing to let anyone tell you what you can't do. That's just survival. No, that's you. She leaned against him. He put his arm around her. They sat like that until the sun started to set and the cold got too much to ignore. Come inside, Vivian said. I want to show you something. She led him through the house to the sunroom. The space looked completely different now. Finished floors, fresh paint, new furniture she'd bought last week. But what caught Nolan's attention was the wall. Photos. Dozens of them. framed and hung in a careful grid. Photos of the storm damage, the fallen tree, the destroyed roof, the gutted interior, and then photos of the repair, the bracing, the new framing, the finished work. Progress documented in images. It's a reminder, Vivian said, that broken things can be fixed, that the worst night of your life doesn't have to be the end of your story. Nolan studied the photos, saw himself in several of them, covered in sawdust, hauling debris, talking to inspectors. He hadn't realized she'd been documenting him too. You kept all of these, he said, every single one. Because this wasn't just about fixing a house. It was about remembering that I'm capable of surviving things I thought would destroy me. She turned to face him. You gave me that. You and your crew and your stubborn refusal to let me give up. I don't think I ever properly thanked you for that. You paid the invoice. That's thanks enough. It's not. She moved closer. The money was just money. What you gave me was worth more than that. You gave me a reason to keep standing. Vivian, I love you. The words hit like a freight train. Nolan froze, stared at her. You don't have to say it back, Vivian added quickly. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But I needed you to know, because I spent 8 years married to someone who made me feel small and broken and not enough. And you made me feel the opposite. You made me feel strong, capable, worth fighting for. And I love you for that. Nolan's brain finally caught up to his heart. I love you too. Vivian's breath caught. Yeah? Yeah. I've been trying not to say it because Marcus said I was moving too fast and I didn't want to screw this up. But yeah, I love you. She kissed him, hard and desperate and full of relief. Stay tonight, she said against his mouth. Not at your place. Here, in my house, in my bed. I want to wake up with you here. Emma is sleeping over at Madison's. You told me this morning. So stay, please. He stayed. They made love in her bedroom, the one room of the house that hadn't been touched by the storm. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like lavender and possibility, Nolan felt something shift inside him. Something that had been locked down since Sarah died. Permission to move forward. Permission to want something beyond just survival. I could get used to this, Vivian murmured against his chest. Me too. So let's what? Get used to it. Stop pretending this is temporary. Stop keeping our lives separate like we're afraid to commit. Nolan propped himself up on one elbow, looked at her. What are you saying? I'm saying move in with me. You and Emma. This house is too big for just me anyway. And I'm tired of saying goodnight and watching you walk back to your place like we're teenagers sneaking around. Vivian, that's too fast. I know, but everything about us has been too fast. The storm was too fast. The repairs were too fast. Falling in love was definitely too fast. So why are we pretending slow is going to work now? Because Emma. Because blending families is complicated. Because you're scared. He was. Terrified. Of screwing up. Of moving too fast. Of building something beautiful and watching it collapse. But he was also tired of being scared. Let me talk to Emma first, he said. Make sure she's okay with it. Then we'll figure out logistics. Vivian smiled, kissed him. That's all I'm asking. The conversation with Emma happened 3 days later. Nolan waited until after dinner, after homework, after the nightly routine that had become their rhythm. Then he sat her down on the couch. I need to talk to you about something important, he said. Emma's eyes went wide. Am I in trouble? No, nothing like that. Is Miss Vivian okay? She's fine. Actually, this is about her and us and some changes that might be happening. Emma waited. Patient in that way kids are when they know something big is coming. Vivian asked if we'd like to move in with her, Nolan said. Into her house, the three of us living together. Like a family? Yeah, kind of like that. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Would I get my own room? Of all the questions Nolan had prepared for, that wasn't one of them. Yeah, she's got 4 bedrooms. You could pick whichever one you wanted. Even the one with the window seat? Even that one. And we'd still live next door so I could walk to Madison's? Actually, we'd be living in Vivian's house, so even closer to Madison. Emma considered this. Would you be happy? The question caught him off guard. What? If we moved in, would you be happy? Because you've been sad a lot since Mom died. But you're not sad anymore when Miss Vivian is around. Nolan's throat tightened. Yeah, kiddo, I think I would be happy. Then okay. Okay? Yeah, I like Miss Vivian. She's nice, and she makes good cookies, and I think Mom would want you to be happy again. Nolan pulled Emma into a hug, held her tight, wondered how he'd gotten so lucky to have a kid this understanding. We'll take it slow, he said. Make sure everyone's comfortable. Make sure it works. Dad, you're bad at slow. Yeah, I really am. They moved in 2 weeks before Christmas. Not all at once. Gradually. A few boxes at a time. Clothes first, then books, then furniture. Emma's room came together piece by piece. She picked the one with the window seat, just like she wanted. Decorated it with posters and stuffed animals and the general chaos of a 7-year-old's personal space. Nolan's stuff mixed with Vivian's in a way that felt natural. His tools in her garage, her coffee maker next to his on the counter. Their lives blending. Marcus helped with the heavy lifting, complained the entire time about how Nolan was officially domestic now, and there was no coming back from this. You're moved in before New Year's, Marcus said, hauling a dresser up the stairs. That's got to be some kind of record. Shut up and lift. I'm just saying, 6 months ago, you didn't even know this woman. Now you're playing house. We're not playing. No, you're really doing it, which is somehow even crazier. But Marcus was smiling when he said it. Happy for him, even if he'd never admit it. The first night all three of them slept under the same roof, Vivian cooked dinner. Actual dinner. Not takeout, not frozen pizza. A real meal with vegetables and everything. Emma set the table. Nolan poured wine for the adults and juice for Emma. They sat together in the dining room, the one Nolan had helped repair, and ate like they'd been doing this for years. This is nice, Emma said through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. Don't talk with your mouth full, Nolan said automatically. Sorry, she swallowed. But it is nice. It feels like we're a real family now. Vivian's eyes went bright. She reached across the table, squeezed Emma's hand. Yeah, it does. After dinner, after Emma was in bed, Nolan and Vivian stood together in the sunroom. The room that had started everything, the space that had been destroyed and rebuilt and made stronger. You think this is going to work? Vivian asked. I don't know. Probably not. We'll fight about something stupid. Emma will get moody. You'll get sick of my tools everywhere. I'll get annoyed at your work calls at midnight. That's a terrible sales pitch. I'm not selling. I'm being realistic. It's not going to be perfect. But perfect's overrated. I'll take real over perfect any day. Vivian leaned into him. Real. I can do real. They stood there watching the lights from the neighborhood filter through the new windows. Christmas decorations going up, life continuing, the world moving forward whether they were ready or not. I still can't believe this is the same room, Vivian said, the one that was full of broken glass and tree branches and water damage. It's not the same room. It's better, stronger, like I told you before. You keep saying that because it's true. She turned to face him. What about us? Are we stronger too? Or are we just two broken people holding each other up? Nolan thought about that. About Sarah dying and leaving him shattered. About Richard destroying Vivian's life and walking away. About the storm and the damage and the long fight to rebuild. Maybe it's both, he said. Maybe we're broken and strong at the same time. Maybe that's what makes this work. I love that answer. It's the only one I've got. Christmas came and went. New Year's followed. January brought freezing temperatures and the kind of cold that made getting out of bed feel impossible. But the house stayed warm, solid, strong. They fell into a routine, Nolan working construction jobs during the day. Vivian taking consulting calls, slowly rebuilding the career she'd put on hold during the divorce. Emma going to school and coming home to a house that finally felt stable. It wasn't perfect. Emma had nightmares sometimes. Vivian had bad days where the divorce felt too raw. Nolan carried guilt about Sarah that wouldn't fully fade, but they worked through it, together. One afternoon in late January, Nolan came home to find Vivian standing outside, staring at something by the front door. A plaque, small, brass, mounted just below the doorbell. It read, Vivian Hale, Estrance 2025. You actually did it, he said. I told you I would. This house belongs to me, just me. I wanted everyone to know it. How's it feel? She smiled. Like winning. That night, Richard called. Nolan was in the garage working on Emma's rocket project when Vivian's phone rang. He heard her answer, heard her voice go cold and clipped. He came inside to find her standing in the kitchen, knuckles white around her phone. What did he want? Nolan asked after she hung up. To apologize. Said he'd been thinking about everything that happened, said he handled the divorce badly, said he wanted to make amends. You believe him? No. I think his girlfriend left him and now he's lonely and looking for attention. Vivian set her phone down. He asked if I'd consider talking, maybe meeting for coffee, to clear the air. What did you say? I said no. That chapter's closed. I'm not opening it again just because he's feeling nostalgic. Nolan crossed the kitchen, pulled her close. Good. You're not worried that I'll change my mind, go back to him? Should I be? No, but some guys would be. I'm not some guys. She kissed him. No, you're really not. The call bothered her, though. Nolan could tell. She was quieter that evening, distracted, kept checking her phone like she expected Richard to call again. He didn't. But 2 days later, flowers arrived. Expensive ones. The kind Richard used to send when he screwed up and wanted forgiveness without actually apologizing. The card read, I miss you. We were good together once. Remember that. Vivian threw them in the trash. He's trying to get in your head, Nolan said. I know. Don't let him. I'm not. But the flowers kept coming. Every few days. Different arrangements, different cards. All saying the same thing in different ways. I'm sorry. I miss you. We can fix this. After the 5th delivery, Vivian called Richard. Nolan only heard her side of the conversation. Stop sending flowers. Stop calling. Stop trying to rewrite history. I don't care if you're sorry. You don't get to apologize your way out of what you did. No, we're not meeting for coffee. We're not meeting for anything because I'm done. I've moved on. You should too. That's none of your business. Goodbye, Richard. She hung up, hands shaking. He knows you're here, she said. Someone told him. Now he's acting like I cheated, like I'm the one who ruined our marriage. You want me to talk to him? No, he's baiting you. That's what he does. Finds pressure points and pushes until something breaks. I won't break. Everyone breaks eventually. That's what he counts on. The flowers stopped after that call, but the damage was done. Vivian was on edge, jumped at phone calls, checked the doorbell camera obsessively, waited for the next move. It came a week later, not flowers this time, a letter, hand-delivered by a process server to Vivian while she was at the grocery store. Emma was with her, saw the whole thing. When they came home, Vivian's hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the lock. Nolan took the letter from her. Read it. Emotion. Filed by Richard's attorney, requesting a modification to the settlement agreement, claiming that Vivian had misrepresented her financial situation during negotiations, demanding an audit of her assets and a recalculation of the division. It was bullshit, pure harassment, but it would still require a response, still require lawyers, still cost time and money and energy. He can't do this, Vivian said. The settlement's final. The judge signed off on it. He can file whatever he wants. Doesn't mean it'll go anywhere. But we'll have to fight it. I'll have to hire Jennifer again. Go back to court. Defend myself against lies. Then we'll do that. I can't. I'm so tired, Nolan. I don't have anything left to fight with. Emma was watching from the doorway, eyes wide, scared. Nolan handed the letter back to Vivian. Go upstairs, take a breath, I'll handle this. You can't. Go, please. She went. Nolan turned to Emma. Hey, kiddo, you okay? Emma shook her head. Is Vivian going to leave? What? No. Why would you think that? Because that man keeps bothering her, and she's crying again. And last time someone kept making Mom cry, she got sick and then she died. The logic was heartbreaking and wrong, but Nolan understood where it came from. He knelt down, pulled Emma close. Vivian's not sick. She's just dealing with a difficult situation. But she's strong, stronger than you know, and she's not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. After Emma went to bed, Nolan called Jennifer Chen. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Pierce, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. You know about the motion? Got a copy this afternoon. It's garbage. Pure harassment. Judge will throw it out at the first hearing. When's that? Could be 2 months, could be 6, depends on the docket. Vivian doesn't have 6 months. This is already destroying her. I know, but the system moves at its own pace. We file a response. We argue it's frivolous. We ask for sanctions, but we can't force Richard to stop being an asshole. Nolan paced the kitchen. What if I talk to him? I'd advise against that. I didn't ask for advice, I asked what if. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. If you're going to do something stupid, at least don't threaten him. That's assault, and it gives him exactly what he wants. I'm not going to threaten him. Then what are you going to do? Remind him what he's actually fighting for. He hung up before she could argue. Finding Richard wasn't hard. The man's office was listed on his company website. 40th floor of a glass tower downtown. The kind of place designed to make you feel small. Nolan showed up the next afternoon during lunch, told the receptionist he had a delivery for Richard Hale. She waved him through without asking questions. Richard's office looked exactly like Nolan expected. Leather furniture, expensive art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man himself sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Nolan's truck. He looked up when Nolan walked in. Surprise flickered across his face before settling into something colder. You must be the contractor, Richard said. Nolan Pierce. I know who you are. Vivian's... What? Boyfriend, new husband, rebound? Someone who cares about her. That's all you need to know. Richard leaned back in his chair. Let me guess. She sent you here to intimidate me, to make me drop the motion. She doesn't know I'm here, and I'm not here to intimidate you. I'm here to ask you a question. Which is, what do you actually want? Richard blinked. Excuse me? You got your settlement. You walked away with your investments and your cars and your freedom. Vivian got the house. Clean split. So what are you trying to accomplish with this motion? Because it's not about money. You've got plenty of that. So what is it? Richard's jaw tightened. That's none of your business. Wrong. You made it my business when you started harassing the woman I love. Love? Richard laughed. You've known her what? 3 months? And you think that's love? I know what it's not. It's not making her feel small. It's not weaponizing the legal system because your ego's bruised. It's not sending flowers and pretending to apologize while simultaneously filing motions to drag her back into court. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know enough. I know you left her. I know you froze her accounts. I know you tried to force her to sell the house she fought to keep. And I know you're still trying to control her because you can't handle the fact that she's moved on. Richard stood. Get out of my office. Not until you answer my question. What do you want? I want what's fair. You got fair. You got more than fair. So what do you really want? Richard's composure cracked. Just for a second. I want her to regret it. I want her to realize what she lost. I want her to come crawling back so I can tell her no. There it was. The truth under all the legal maneuvering and performative apologies. Nolan almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She's not coming back, Nolan said quietly. Ever. You burned that bridge. She's moved on. Built a new life. A better one. The only person still stuck in your marriage is you. You think you're better than me? I think I showed up when she needed someone and didn't make it about me. That's not better. That's just basic human decency. Richard's face went red. Get out. I'm going. But understand something. If you keep filing motions, keep harassing her, keep trying to drag her back into your mess, I'm going to make sure every single one of your investors knows exactly the kind of man you are. The kind who torments his ex-wife for sport. I don't think that'll be good for business. Are you threatening me? I'm making a promise. Leave Vivian alone or everyone in your world will know who you really are. Nolan turned and walked out before Richard could respond. His hands were shaking by the time he got to his truck. Adrenaline, anger, maybe fear, but he'd said what needed to be said. His phone rang before he made it home. Jennifer Chen. What the hell did you do? She asked. How did you? Richard's attorney just called. Said they're withdrawing the motion. Said Richard's decided to move on with his life and leave the settlement as is. Nolan pulled over. He's dropping it? Completely. No conditions? No counters? Just done. When? Effective immediately. I'll have the paperwork by end of day. Nolan closed his eyes, let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thank you for calling," he said. "Nolan, what did you do?" "I had a conversation, that's all." Must have been some conversation. It was honest. Maybe that's all it needed to be. He drove home, found Vivian in the sunroom, staring at her phone like she was waiting for bad news. "It's over," Nolan said. She looked up. "What?" Richard dropped the motion. "Jennifer just called. He's withdrawing everything. It's done." Vivian stared at him. "How?" "I asked him what he really wanted. Turns out he wanted to be heard. Once he said it out loud, he realized how pathetic it sounded." "You talked to him?" "Yeah." "Without telling me?" "Yeah." She should have been angry, should have yelled at him for going behind her back. Instead, she just started crying. Not sad crying, relief crying. The kind that comes when a weight you've been carrying finally lifts. Nolan crossed the room, pulled her close, let her cry until there was nothing left. "It's really over?" she asked against his chest. "It's really over. I can stop looking over my shoulder? Stop waiting for the next thing? You can breathe again." She pulled back, looked at him. "What did you say to him?" "The truth. That he'd already lost. That you'd moved on. That trying to drag you back was only hurting him. And he just accepted that?" "Eventually, after I reminded him what was at stake if he didn't." Vivian almost smiled. "You threatened him." "I made a promise. There's a difference." She kissed him. "Thank you. For fighting for me. For seeing what I needed even when I couldn't ask for it. That's what you do for people you love." "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." They stood there in the sunroom, the room that had started everything, the room that had been broken and rebuilt and made whole. Just like them. Just like the life they were building together. Spring came early that year. By March, the snow had melted and the yard was turning green again. Vivian spent her weekends planting flowers in the beds that had been destroyed by the fallen oak. Daffodils, tulips, things that bloomed despite the damage underneath. Nolan watched her from the porch one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, thinking about how different she looked now compared to that first night. Stronger, steadier, like she'd found her center again. Emma was helping. Sort of. Mostly she was digging holes in random places and declaring them perfect for whatever Vivian was trying to plant. "That's too close to the fence," Vivian said gently. "But what if the flowers want to be close to the fence? Then they'll grow sideways and look weird." Emma considered this. "Maybe weird is good." Vivian laughed. "You know what? Maybe it is." She let Emma plant the bulb where she wanted it. Nolan smiled into his coffee. His phone rang. "Marcus, you sitting down?" Marcus asked. "Should I be?" "Got a call this morning. Big job. Commercial renovation downtown. They want to know if we can start in 2 weeks." "How big?" 6 months of work, maybe 8. Crew of 12. Real money." Nolan set down his coffee. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Client saw our work on the Riverside project last year. Wants the same quality. Willing to pay for it. Send me the details." "Already did. Check your email." Nolan pulled up the specs on his phone, read through them twice. It was legitimate, the kind of job that could carry his business for a year. "I'm in," he said. "Good, because I already told them yes." Marcus paused. "How's domestic life?" "Good, weird, normal." That's the most honest answer I've ever heard. It's true. Some days feel like we've been doing this forever. Other days I wake up and can't believe any of it's real. That's called being in a relationship, man. It's supposed to feel like that. Is it? Yeah, the good ones at least. After they hung up, Nolan went outside. Told Vivian about the job. "That's amazing," she said, wiping dirt from her hands. "You deserve it. Means longer hours for a while. I'll be home late most nights. We'll manage. Emma and I can hold down the fort." Emma looked up from her hole. "Does this mean you're going to be gone a lot?" "More than usual, yeah. But you'll still be home for dinner sometimes?" "I'll try." Emma frowned. Trying's not the same as promising. Nolan knelt down beside her. "You're right, so I promise. At least 3 nights a week, no matter how busy work gets. Deal?" "Deal." They shook on it. Emma's hand was covered in dirt. Nolan's was too by the time they finished. The job started 2 weeks later. It was everything Marcus promised and more. Complicated, demanding, the kind of work that required Nolan's full attention. But he kept his promise to Emma. 3 nights a week, he was home by 6. The other nights, Vivian saved him dinner. They'd eat together after Emma went to bed, talking about their days, finding their rhythm. Some nights were harder than others. Emma had a meltdown one Tuesday because Nolan missed her school play rehearsal. Vivian tried to smooth it over, but Emma wouldn't budge. "You promised you'd be there," Emma said, arms crossed, tears streaming down her face. "I know, kiddo. I'm sorry. The job ran late and I couldn't—" "You said 3 nights. This was supposed to be one of them." She wasn't wrong. Nolan had promised Tuesday and then changed it to Thursday without asking her first. "You're right," he said. "I messed up. I should have kept my word." "So why didn't you?" It was a fair question, one Nolan didn't have a good answer for. "Because I got distracted," he admitted. "Because I thought work was more important in that moment. But it wasn't. You are. And I forgot that." Emma wiped her eyes. "Are you going to forget again?" "Probably. I'm not perfect. But when I do, I need you to call me on it. Just like you're doing now." "And then you'll fix it?" "I'll try my best." Emma thought about that. Then she hugged him. "Okay, but you still owe me. You have to come to the actual play." "I'll be front row, promise." He was. Opening night, front row center, with Vivian beside him and his phone turned completely off. Emma spotted them during her big scene and grinned so wide Nolan thought his heart might burst. After the play, Emma ran up to them, still in her costume. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly. "You were perfect," Vivian said. "Did I remember all my lines?" "Every single one." Emma beamed, then she turned to Nolan. "You kept your promise." "I did." "Good, because I'd have been really mad if you didn't." They went out for ice cream after. The 3 of them squished into a booth at the diner, eating sundaes that were too big and laughing at Emma's dramatic retelling of backstage chaos. Watching them together, Emma animated and happy, Vivian engaged and present, Nolan realized something. This wasn't just working. It was real. Messy and imperfect and sometimes hard, but real. The kind of real that lasted. In April, Vivian got a job offer. A tech startup in the city wanted her to consult on their expansion strategy. 6-month contract with possibility of extension. Good money. The kind of work she used to do before the divorce consumed everything. "I'm thinking about taking it," she told Nolan one night after Emma was asleep. "You should. It means I'll be traveling sometimes. Day trips mostly, maybe an overnight here and there." "Okay. You're not worried? About juggling schedules? About who picks up Emma when we're both working?" "We'll figure it out. Same way we figure out everything else." Vivian smiled. "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy, but it's doable. And you deserve to get back to work you love." "What if I'm terrible at it? What if I took too much time off and forgot how to do this?" "Then you'll remember. You're good at this stuff. You always have been." She took the job. The first few weeks were rough, scheduling conflicts, missed handoffs. One memorable morning where both of them forgot it was early dismissal and Emma ended up waiting at school for 45 minutes. But they adjusted, created systems, color-coded calendars, backup plans, the kind of infrastructure that kept a blended family running. Emma adapted too. She liked having Vivian around more during the day when Nolan was at work, liked coming home to someone who helped with homework and listened to her ramble about whatever drama was happening in 2nd grade. One afternoon, Nolan came home early and found them in the kitchen baking cookies. Or trying to. There was flour everywhere. Emma had chocolate on her face. Vivian's hair was falling out of its ponytail. "What happened here?" Nolan asked. "We're making cookies for Madison's birthday," Emma explained. "But the recipe's really hard." Nolan looked at the disaster zone that used to be his kitchen. "I can see that." "Don't judge," Vivian said. We're learning." "By destroying the kitchen? It's a process." Emma giggled. "Vivian said a bad word when the eggs broke." "Did she now?" "It was justified," Vivian said. "Those eggs were being difficult." They finished the cookies together. They were lumpy and misshapen and probably the ugliest cookies Nolan had ever seen. Emma was so proud of them, she made him eat 3. Later that night, After Emma was asleep and the kitchen was clean, Vivian and Nolan sat on the back porch watching the stars. "I like this," Vivian said quietly. "The porch? All of it. The chaos, the schedules, the burned cookies, the feeling like I'm part of something instead of just surviving on my own." Nolan took her hand. "You are part of something. This. Us." "I know, it's just, I spent so long being alone. Even when I was married, I was alone. Richard was there, but he never really saw me, never wanted to build anything with me, just wanted me to fit into his life without taking up space. You take up space here, as much as you want." "Yeah." She leaned against him. "I'm starting to believe that." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Vivian said, "I need to tell you something." Nolan's chest tightened. Nothing good ever started with those words. "Okay." "Richard's getting remarried." Of all the things Nolan expected, that wasn't it. "To who?" "The woman he left me for. Jennifer told me this afternoon. They're getting married in June." "How do you feel about that?" Vivian was quiet for a long time. "Relieved, mostly. It means he's actually moved on. He's someone else's problem now." But there's this weird part of me that's still angry. Not because I want him back. I don't. Not even a little. But because he gets to just move forward. Like our marriage never happened. Like he didn't destroy my life and then skip off to his next adventure while I was left picking up pieces. That's fair. You're allowed to be angry. I don't want to be, though. I want to let it go. I want to stop caring about what he does or who he's with or whether he ever actually regrets what he did. You will. Eventually. These things take time. How much time did it take you? With Sarah? The question caught Nolan off guard. Nobody asked about Sarah anymore, not directly. "I don't know if it ever fully stopped hurting," he said honestly, "but it stopped consuming me. Stopped being the first thing I thought about every morning. That probably took 2 years, maybe more. And now? Now I can remember the good parts without drowning in the sad parts. I can talk about her with Emma without falling apart. I can think about the future without feeling guilty." Because of me? Because of time. And therapy. And Emma needing me to be present. You helped too. Gave me a reason to look forward instead of back. Vivian kissed his cheek. We saved each other, didn't we? I think we saved ourselves. Just happened to do it at the same time. Summer arrived hot and sticky. The kind of heat that made air conditioning feel like a luxury and outside work almost unbearable. Nolan's commercial job was behind schedule. Budget overruns, design changes, the usual construction nightmares. He came home exhausted most nights. Showered, ate whatever Vivian had saved him, collapsed into bed. Emma noticed. "Dad's always tired now," she told Vivian one afternoon. "Big projects are like that. They take a lot out of you. Is he going to get sick like Mom did?" Vivian's heart broke a little. "No, sweetie, he's just working hard. Being tired from work is different than being sick." "You sure?" "I'm sure. But maybe we can help him relax a little when he gets home. What do you think?" They started small things. Emma drew pictures and left them on the kitchen table for Nolan to find. Vivian made sure his favorite beer was always cold. They'd greet him at the door with hugs instead of immediately launching into the day's problems. It helped. Nolan started smiling more, sleeping better. The exhaustion didn't disappear, but it became manageable. In July, the commercial job finally wrapped. Nolan's crew celebrated with beer and pizza. The client was happy. The work was solid, everything Nolan had hoped for. Marcus clapped him on the back. "You did good, boss. Real good." "We did good. Couldn't have finished without the crew." "What's next?" "Honestly, I'm thinking about taking a week off, just unplugging, spending time with Emma and Vivian." "You've earned it," Nolan told Vivian that night. "How do you feel about a vacation? Nothing fancy. Maybe a cabin upstate. Just the 3 of us." "Emma would love that." "What about you?" "I'd love it too. When were you thinking?" "Next week? I know it's short notice, but next week's perfect. I'll clear my schedule." They rented a cabin on a lake 2 hours north. Small, rustic, the kind of place with no Wi-Fi and questionable plumbing. Emma thought it was the greatest adventure of her life. They spent 3 days swimming and hiking and roasting marshmallows over a fire pit. Emma caught her first fish. Vivian got sunburned despite wearing sunscreen. Nolan taught them both how to skip stones across the water. One evening, while Emma was occupied with a puzzle inside, Nolan and Vivian sat on the dock watching the sunset. I could get used to this, Vivian said. What? No cell service and bugs everywhere? Peace, quiet, not having to check my calendar every 5 minutes. We should do this more often. We should. Though Emma might actually combust if we make her leave her friends more than once a year. Nolan laughed. True. Vivian pulled her knees to her chest. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about getting married again? The question hung in the air between them, heavy, significant. Sometimes, Nolan said carefully. Do you? I didn't used to. After Richard, I thought I was done with marriage forever, that I'd proven I was terrible at it and should just avoid the whole institution. And now? Now I think maybe I wasn't terrible at marriage. I was just married to the wrong person. She looked at him. With the right person, maybe it could be different. Nolan's heart was pounding. Are you asking me something? No, not yet. I'm just thinking out loud, seeing how it feels to say it. How does it feel? Scary, but good scary. Like standing at the edge of something and knowing the jump might actually be worth it. Nolan pulled her close. For what it's worth, I think you'd be great at it, with the right person. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there as the sun disappeared and the stars came out. Not engaged, not planning anything, just two people acknowledging that maybe, someday, they'd be ready for more. When they got back from vacation, there was a letter waiting, hand-addressed, no return address. Vivian opened it while Nolan unpacked the car. It was from Richard. Not another legal threat. Not harassment, just a letter. Vivian, I heard you're doing well. Working again. Happy. I'm glad. I know I have no right to be glad about anything in your life, but I am anyway. Jennifer told me I shouldn't write this, that I should leave well enough alone. But I needed you to know something. You were right. About everything. I made you small because I was afraid of how big you could be. I controlled you because I couldn't control myself. I blamed you for the failure of our marriage when the truth is, I failed us long before you ever stopped trying. I'm getting remarried next month. You probably heard. Part of me hopes this time will be different, that I've learned something, that I won't repeat the same mistakes. But another part of me knows I'm still the same person who hurt you, who weaponized the legal system to punish you for moving on, who tried to take your house because my ego couldn't handle the fact that you were building a life without me. I'm sorry for all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, doesn't undo the damage, doesn't give you back the year you spent fighting me instead of living your life. But I needed to say it anyway. I hope you're happy. I hope the contractor guy treats you the way I should have. I hope you never think about me except maybe as a lesson in what not to settle for. Be well, Richard. Vivian read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Nolan came inside. Everything okay? Yeah, just something from Richard. Bad? No. Actually kind of good, or as good as it could be coming from him. You want to talk about it? Not really. I just want to throw it away and move on. Then do that. Vivian walked to the trash can, held the letter over it, hesitated. What's wrong? Nolan asked. I spent so much energy hating him, being angry at him, blaming him for everything that went wrong, and now he's apologizing and I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it. His apology is about him feeling better, not about you owing him forgiveness. But what if I want to forgive him? Not for his sake, for mine, so I can actually let it go instead of carrying it around. Then forgive him. But you don't need his letter to do that. You can forgive him and still throw it away. Vivian looked at the letter one more time, then dropped it in the trash. There, she said. Done. How do you feel? Lighter. Like I just put down something I've been carrying too long. She walked over to Nolan, wrapped her arms around him, held on. Thank you, she said. For what? For being patient with me. For understanding that healing isn't linear. For not trying to fix me or rush me or make me be someone I'm not. I wouldn't know how to do any of that even if I wanted to. She laughed. I know. That's what I love about you. In August, Vivian's consulting contract was extended. Full-time position. Benefits. The whole package. She celebrated by taking everyone out to dinner. This is a big deal, Nolan said, raising his glass. It's a huge deal. A year ago, I was unemployed and fighting for my house. Now I have a career again, a home, a family. She looked at Emma. Everything I thought I'd lost. Emma raised her juice box. To Vivian, getting a real job. It was always a real job, Vivian said. Yeah, but now you get paid more. That's true. They clinked glasses and juice boxes and dug into their food. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Vivian pulled a small box from her purse. I got you something, she said. Nolan opened it. Inside was a key. Plain, silver, ordinary. It's the key to my house, Vivian said. I know you already live there. I know you have keys. But this one's different. This one's symbolic. Symbolic how? This is me officially asking you to stay. Not as the guy who helped me through a crisis. Not as the contractor who saved my house. But as my partner, my family. The person I'm choosing to build a life with. Nolan looked at the key. At her. You know I'm not going anywhere, right? I know, but I needed to say it anyway. Needed you to hear it. He closed the box, set it aside, pulled her close. I'm staying for as long as you'll have me. Forever might be too long. Forever sounds just right. September brought new routines. Emma started 3rd grade. Vivian's work schedule stabilized. Nolan took on smaller local projects instead of huge commercial jobs, things that kept him closer to home. They were sitting on the porch one evening, the porch they'd rebuilt together, when Emma came outside carrying a notebook. I have to write an essay for school, she announced. About family. Can I interview you guys? Sure, Nolan said. What do you need to know? Emma opened her notebook importantly. Question 1. What does family mean to you? Vivian and Nolan exchanged glances. Family is the people who show up, Nolan said. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, when you need them most. Emma wrote that down. What about you, Vivian? Vivian thought about it. Family is people who see you, really see you. Not who they want you to be or who you used to be, but who you are right now, and they love you anyway. More writing. Then Emma looked up. Last question. How did we become a family? This time Nolan answered. A tree fell on Vivian's house during a storm. I came over to help. And we kind of built everything from there. That's it? A tree? That's how it started. But what made us a family was choosing to keep building, choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. Emma frowned. That's not very exciting. Madison's essay is about how her parents met at a concert and her dad proposed on a beach. Well, our story's different, Vivian said, but it's ours. And I like it. Me too, Emma admitted, even if it is kind of weird. After Emma went back inside, Vivian leaned against Nolan. She's right, you know. Our story is weird. Weird good or weird bad? Weird perfect, for us anyway. One Saturday in October, Nolan was fixing the garbage disposal when he heard Vivian call from upstairs. Nolan, can you come up here? He found her in the bedroom they shared, standing in front of the mirror. She was wearing a dress. Dark blue. Simple. Elegant. What do you think? She asked. About what? The dress. Does it look okay? It looks great. Where are you going? Richard's wedding. He invited me. Well, he sent an invitation to my lawyer who forwarded it to me. I wasn't going to go, but then I thought maybe I should. Close that chapter properly. Nolan processed this. You want to go to your ex-husband's wedding. Not want, but I think I need to. Does that make sense? Not really. But if you think it'll help, I'll support it. You're not coming with me. I figured. I need to do this alone, face it alone, prove to myself that I can be in the same room as him and not fall apart. Okay. Okay. That's it? You're not going to argue or ask if I'm sure? You're sure. I can tell. And you don't need my permission. Vivian kissed him. How did I get so lucky? Pretty sure I'm the lucky one. She went to the wedding, came back 3 hours later looking tired but calm. How was it? Nolan asked. Exactly what I expected. Fancy venue, expensive flowers. Richard in a tux looking pleased with himself. She kicked off her heels. I talked to him, just for a minute. He introduced me to his new wife. She seems nice, young, impressed by all the things I used to be impressed by. How did it feel? Like watching someone else's life. Like that chapter really is closed. She sat beside him. I'm done being angry. Done comparing what I have now to what I had then. Because what I have now is so much better, it's not even a fair comparison. Yeah? Yeah. Richard never saw me, never wanted to. You do. That makes all the difference. In November, Emma asked the question Nolan had been dreading. Are you and Vivian going to get married? They were at breakfast. Vivian nearly choked on her coffee. What makes you ask that? Nolan said carefully. Because Madison's parents got married and then Madison got a new baby sister. And I think a baby sister would be cool. Marriage doesn't automatically mean babies, Vivian said. But it could, right? Nolan and Vivian looked at each other. They hadn't talked about marriage, not seriously, not beyond that conversation at the lake. Would you want us to get married? Nolan asked. Emma shrugged. I don't know. Maybe. I like how things are now. But I also think it would be cool if Vivian was officially my stepmom instead of just Dad's girlfriend. Stepmom's a big word, Vivian said quietly. I know. But you do all the stepmom stuff already. Help with homework, make dinner, come to my school things. You're basically my stepmom without the official part. After Emma left for school, Nolan and Vivian sat in the kitchen, not quite looking at each other. So, Vivian said. So. She wants us to get married. Seems like it. How do you feel about that? Nolan took a breath. Honestly, I've been thinking about it for months. Just didn't know how to bring it up. Didn't want to pressure you or make you think I expected something just because we're living together. I've been thinking about it too, but I'm terrified of making the same mistakes. Of rushing into something because it feels good right now without thinking about whether it'll last. We're not rushing. We've been together almost a year, living together for 9 months. If anything, we're taking it slow. Is 9 months slow? For us? Yeah. Vivian smiled. Fair point. So what do you want to do? I want to marry you. I want Emma to officially be my stepdaughter. I want to stop calling this your house or my house and start calling it our house. She paused. But I also want to do it right. Not some quick courthouse thing. An actual wedding, small, just people we care about. A real celebration. That sounds perfect. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there grinning at each other like idiots until Vivian said, So are you going to propose or am I? I'll propose. But I need to do it properly. Get a ring. Plan something. Make it special. I don't need special. I know. But I want to give it to you anyway. He proposed 3 weeks later. Not some elaborate production. Just the 3 of them in the sunroom on a Saturday afternoon. Emma was in on it, had been begging to help plan for days. Vivian, Nolan said, Emma and I want to ask you something. Vivian looked up from her book, saw them standing there, saw the small box in Nolan's hand. Oh my, will you marry us? Emma blurted out. Because we love you and we want you to stay forever and Dad got you a ring and I helped pick it out and… Breathe, kiddo, Nolan said gently. Then he turned to Vivian. What she said. Will you marry us? Build this life with us? Be our family officially? Vivian was crying. Happy tears this time. Yes, obviously yes, Emma cheered. Nolan slipped the ring on Vivian's finger. It fit perfectly. They got married in March. 1 year almost to the day after the storm that started everything. Small ceremony in the backyard. Just Marcus and his wife, David and Cole and their families, Jennifer Chen, a handful of Vivian's colleagues, and Emma's entire second grade class because Emma insisted. Emma was the flower girl. Wore a dress she picked out herself and scattered petals everywhere like she was creating art. Marcus officiated because, of course he did, gave a speech about how he'd watched Nolan fall apart after Sarah died and how Vivian had put him back together without even trying. You two saved each other, Marcus said. Built something from nothing, took broken pieces and made something whole. That's what love is. That's what marriage should be. Vivian and Nolan exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Vivian went first. I came to you broken. You didn't try to fix me. You just stood beside me while I learned to fix myself. You showed me that strength isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to rebuild. I promise to keep building with you, through storms and calm, through easy days and hard ones, for as long as we both shall live. Nolan's turn. You asked me once if I thought you were still pretty. I told you that you needed to be the post. What I didn't say then was that I needed you to be the post too. Needed someone strong enough to hold when everything tried to break. You've been that for me, for Emma, for this family we built. I promise to be your post too. To hold when you need holding. To stand when you need standing. To love you exactly as you are. They kissed. Everyone cheered. Emma threw more petals even though she'd already scattered them all. The reception was in the sunroom. The room that had been destroyed and rebuilt. The room that represented everything they'd survived. Later, when the party was winding down and Emma was asleep on the couch and most of the guests had gone home, Vivian pulled Nolan onto the porch. "We did it," she said. "We did. Built something real, something that lasts." Yeah, she looked at the house, at the plaque by the door that still read Vivian Hale. Ests 2025. "I should change that," she said. "Add your name, make it official." "Keep it," Nolan said. "This house is yours. You fought for it, earned it. My name doesn't need to be on a plaque for me to know I belong here." "You sure?" "Completely." But 3 days later, there was a new plaque beside the old one. This one read, Nolan Pierce and Emma Pierce, Estitri 2026. And below both plaques, a third, smaller, simpler. Family, built from storms. Nolan saw it when he came home from work, stopped, stared. Vivian appeared in the doorway. "I know you said I didn't have to, but I wanted to. Wanted everyone to know this house belongs to all of us now." Nolan kissed her, long and slow and full of everything he felt but couldn't quite say. "It's perfect," he said when they finally broke apart. "We're perfect. In an imperfect, messy, real kind of way. Best kind of perfect there is." That night, after Emma was tucked in and the house was quiet, Nolan and Vivian sat in the sunroom, the space that had started everything, the room that had been broken and rebuilt stronger, just like them. "You know what I realized today?" Vivian said. "What's that?" "That night when I asked if you thought I was still pretty, I wasn't really asking about my appearance. I was asking if I still had value, if I was still worth something after everything Richard took from me. And now? Now I know the answer. I was always worth something. I just couldn't see it until someone showed me how to look." Nolan took her hand. "You showed me too. Showed me that life doesn't end when you think it does. That you can build something new from broken pieces. That love isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to try." They sat there as the evening turned to night. Two people who'd found each other in the middle of a storm and built something strong enough to weather whatever came next. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, the kind of calm that comes after the chaos passes. And inside, in a house that had been destroyed and rebuilt, a family slept. Imperfect and messy and real. But whole. Finally, truly whole.